The glass doors of the Heritage Restaurant gleamed under the late afternoon Chicago sun as Victoria Hayes stepped out of her black Mercedes, her Louboutin heels clicking against the polished concrete. The October air carried the scent of fallen maple leaves and the distant aroma of grilled onions from the restaurant's kitchen. She straightened her tailored Armani blazer and glanced down at her 7-year-old son, Connor, who clutched his iPad like a security blanket. "Remember what we discussed?" Victoria said, her voice carrying the same crisp efficiency she used in boardrooms. "This is a normal family dinner. We order, we eat, we leave. No phone calls, no emails." Connor nodded silently, his pale blue eyes reflecting none of the excitement a child should feel about dinner out. His sandy brown hair was perfectly styled, his clothes pressed and expensive, but something essential was missing. Joy. The spark that should dance in a 7-year-old's eyes was nowhere to be found. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Victoria Hayes controlled a medical technology empire worth $2.8 billion, but walking into the Heritage Restaurant with her son felt like entering uncharted territory. The warm lighting cast a golden glow over polished wood tables and leather banquettes, while the soft murmur of conversations created an intimate atmosphere she rarely experienced. The scent of fresh bread and herbs filled the air, so different from the sterile conference rooms where she spent most of her waking hours. "Mrs. Hayes, welcome back," the maitre d' greeted her with practiced warmth. "Your usual table in the private dining area." Victoria hesitated, glancing down at Connor. He hadn't spoken during the 20-minute drive from their Gold Coast penthouse. In fact, he'd barely spoken all week, answering her questions with nods or single-word responses. When was the last time she'd heard him laugh? The realization hit her like ice water. She couldn't remember. "Actually," she heard herself saying, "could we sit in the main dining room tonight? Somewhere with a good view." The maitre d's eyebrows raised slightly, but he nodded professionally. "Of course. Right this way." As they followed him through the restaurant, Victoria noticed things she'd never paid attention to before. Families laughing together, parents leaning in to listen to their children's animated stories, couples holding hands across tables. The warmth felt foreign, almost overwhelming. Connor walked beside her in silence, his small hand gripping hers with surprising intensity. She looked down at him, noting the tension in his narrow shoulders, the way his free hand clutched his iPad. When had her brilliant, curious little boy become so withdrawn? The answer came to her unbidden. Since the divorce. Since the custody battle. Since she'd thrown herself into saving the company and forgotten to save her relationship with her son. Their table was positioned near the window, offering a view of the tree-lined street outside. Fall in Chicago painted everything in shades of gold and crimson, creating a picture-perfect scene that felt disconnected from Victoria's usual world of glass towers and corporate boardrooms. "The children's menu has some wonderful options," the server said, placing menus in front of them. "And our chef's special tonight is the herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables." Connor didn't even glance at his menu. He powered on his iPad, the blue glow illuminating his pale features as he lost himself in some educational app. Victoria's chest tightened. Even here, surrounded by the laughter and warmth of families, her son retreated into his digital world. "Connor," she said gently, "maybe we could look at the menu together?" "What sounds good to you?" He shrugged without looking up. "Whatever you think is best, Mom." The words stung more than any hostile takeover attempt or scathing board review. Her 7-year-old son spoke to her like a polite stranger, not a beloved child. Victoria set down her menu, really studying Connor's face for the first time in weeks. When had she stopped seeing him as a person and started viewing him as just another item on her endless to-do list? The sound of genuine laughter drew her attention to a table across the room. A man in his late 30s sat with a little girl who couldn't have been much older than Connor. The girl's red-gold hair caught the light as she bounced in her seat, her hands moving animatedly as she told some story that had her father grinning from ear to ear. The man wore a simple blue button-down shirt, clean but clearly not expensive. His dark blonde hair was slightly mussed, and there were laugh lines around his green eyes that spoke of someone who smiled often. He listened to his daughter with complete attention, nodding at appropriate moments, gasping with theatrical surprise when her story called for it. And then Mrs. Peterson said, "It was the best spelling test in the whole 3rd grade," the girl exclaimed, pulling a folded paper from her small purse. "Look, Daddy, 100%. Emma, that's incredible." The man's voice carried such genuine pride that Victoria found herself leaning forward to hear better. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You worked so hard for this." The little girl Emma beamed under her father's praise. Her joy was infectious, radiating outward like sunshine. Victoria couldn't look away as the man carefully examined the spelling test, pointing out specific words and praising his daughter's neat handwriting. "You know what this means?" he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ice cream for dessert?" Emma guessed, practically vibrating with excitement. "Ice cream for dessert," he confirmed, and Emma let out a squeal of delight that made several nearby diners smile. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. When was the last time she'd made Connor squeal with delight? When had she last taken the time to truly celebrate his achievements rather than just acknowledging them with a distracted good job while reviewing emails? Connor's quiet voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you okay?" She turned to find him studying her with those serious blue eyes, his iPad forgotten for the moment. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm fine. I was just watching the happy family." Connor finished his gaze following hers to Emma and her father. The simple observation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Connor had noticed them too. More than that, he'd identified something in their interaction that was missing from his own life. Happiness. Natural, easy, uncomplicated happiness. "They do seem very happy," Victoria agreed, her voice softer than usual. Connor nodded, his attention drifting back to the other table. "She's really excited about her spelling test. You got a perfect score on your math test last week," Victoria said, sudden guilt washing over her. "We should celebrate that too." "It's okay, Mom," Connor said, but his voice carried a weariness that no 7-year-old should possess. "You were busy with the board meeting." The casual acceptance in his tone broke Victoria's heart. Her son had learned not to expect celebration, not to hope for her undivided attention. He'd adapted to her neglect with the resigned grace of someone much older, and the realization made her feel sick. She was about to respond when movement from the other table caught her eye. Emma had jumped up from her chair and was doing some kind of victory dance, her arms pumping in celebration of her spelling success. Her father laughed, clapping along with her impromptu performance. Connor watched them with such longing that Victoria had to look away. Her brilliant, sweet boy was starving for the kind of joy and connection she witnessed at that table. He was starving for a parent who was truly present, truly engaged in his world. The weight of her failures pressed down on her shoulders like a lead blanket. She'd built a billion-dollar empire, commanded respect in boardrooms across the country, and been featured on the covers of financial magazines. But she'd failed at the most important job of her life, being Connor's mother. As Emma settled back into her chair, chattering excitedly about her upcoming school play, Victoria made a decision that surprised her. She wasn't going to let this evening be just another obligation to check off her list. She was going to really try to connect with her son. "Connor," she said, reaching across to gently close his iPad. "Tell me about your day." "All of it. I want to hear everything." Connor's eyes widened in surprise, but after a moment he began to speak. Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, as Victoria listened. really listened, giving him the same attention she'd observed from the father at the nearby table. And then Tommy accidentally knocked over the ant farm in science class, Connor was saying, his voice gaining enthusiasm as Victoria gave him her complete attention. Mrs. Rodriguez said it was okay, because accidents happen, but Tommy started crying because he thought he hurt the ants. Victoria found herself genuinely engaged in her son's story, surprised by his attention to detail and his obvious empathy for his classmates' distress. When had Connor become so observant, so caring? Had these qualities always been there, waiting for someone to notice? "What did you do?" Victoria asked, setting her phone face down on the table to show Connor he had her full focus. "I helped him find all the ants," Connor said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "They were running everywhere, but we got them back in their habitat. Mrs. Rodriguez said teamwork is important in science." "That was very kind of you," Victoria said. "Meaning it. I'm proud of how you helped Tommy." Connor's smile widened, transforming his entire face. For a moment he looked like the carefree little boy she remembered from before the divorce, before her life became consumed by board meetings and hostile takeover attempts. Their conversation was interrupted by a burst of laughter from the table across the room. Emma had apparently finished her dinner and was now showing her father a drawing she'd made, her small hands gesturing excitedly as she explained each detail. Connor's head turned toward the sound, his newfound animation fading as he watched the easy interaction between Emma and her father. Victoria saw the exact moment her son's expression shifted from engagement to longing. "She looks happy," Connor said quietly, his voice carrying a wistfulness that made Victoria's chest ache. "Yes, she does," Victoria agreed, following his gaze. The man was examining Emma's artwork with the same serious attention he'd given her. Spelling test, asking questions about her color choices and pointing out details he particularly liked. Emma glowed under his praise, her confidence blooming with each positive word. Mom, Connor said suddenly, his voice so soft Victoria almost missed it. Could we maybe sit closer to them?" Victoria blinked in surprise. Connor rarely asked for anything, having learned through experience that her attention was usually elsewhere. The request was so unexpected, so unlike her reserved son, that she found herself momentarily speechless. Connor continued, his cheeks flushing pink. "They seem really nice, and maybe the girl would like to be friends." Victoria looked at her son. Really looked at him. The longing in his eyes was unmistakable. Connor wasn't just attracted to Emma's obvious joy, he was hungry for the kind of warm, engaging parent-child relationship he witnessed at that table. He wanted to be part of something he'd never truly experienced. The realization hit Victoria like a thunderbolt. Her son was asking for more than a different table. He was asking for a chance to experience genuine family warmth, even if it was borrowed from strangers. "You'd like to sit with them?" Victoria asked gently. Connor nodded, his blue eyes bright with hope. "The girl looks like she might want to be friends. And her daddy seems really nice. He listens to everything she says." The innocent observation stung, carrying an implied criticism that Connor was too young to fully understand. Victoria's own son had noticed that this stranger listened to his daughter in a way that Victoria didn't listen to Connor. Before Victoria could second-guess herself, she found herself standing. "Come on, then." Connor's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Really?" As they approached the other table, Victoria felt her corporate confidence waver. This wasn't a boardroom where she commanded respect through authority and financial power. This was uncharted territory, where success would be measured by her ability to connect with other human beings. The man looked up as they approached, his green eyes curious but welcoming. Up close, Victoria could see he had kind features with crow's feet that suggested he smiled often. His hands wrapped around a coffee cup were strong and weathered, speaking of physical work rather than desk jobs. "Excuse me," Victoria began, her voice carrying its usual professional tone, before she caught herself and softened it. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but my son Connor was hoping— that is, we were wondering if we might join you. Connor was impressed by your daughter's spelling test, and he thought she seemed very nice." The man's eyebrows raised slightly, but his expression remained warm. "Of course, I'm Ryan Mitchell, and this is my daughter, Emma." Emma looked up from her drawing, her green eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Hi, did you really hear about my spelling test? I got every single word right." Connor stepped forward shyly. "That's really good. I like spelling too. And math." "Math is okay," Emma said, with the diplomatic consideration of an 8-year-old. "But I like art better. Want to see my drawing?" Before Connor could respond, Emma was scooting over in the booth, making room for him beside her. Connor looked up at Victoria for permission, and she nodded her throat tight with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "I'm Victoria Hayes," she said, extending her hand to Ryan as she slid into the booth across from the children. "Ryan Mitchell?" he replied, his handshake firm but brief. "And thank you for coming over. Emma loves making new friends, don't you, Em?" "Yes," Emma exclaimed, already showing Connor her drawing. "This is my house, and that's my daddy, and that's our cat, Whiskers." "Do you have any pets?" Victoria watched in amazement as Connor immediately engaged with Emma's question, his usual reserve melting away in the face of her genuine interest. Within minutes he was telling her about the fish he'd wanted to get, but couldn't because of Victoria's busy travel schedule. "Maybe someday," Connor said wistfully, "when Mum has more time." Victoria felt heat flush her cheeks as Ryan's gaze briefly met hers. There was no judgment in his expression, but she sensed he understood the subtext of Connor's words. "Sometimes life gets really busy," Ryan said diplomatically, "but pets can be a nice addition when the timing is right." Victoria nodded, grateful for his tactful response. She found herself studying Ryan as he interacted with both children, noting how naturally he included Connor in the conversation, asking questions about his interests and responding with genuine enthusiasm. "You said you like math, Connor," Ryan asked. "That's fantastic. Emma struggles a bit with math, but she's getting better. Maybe you could share some tips." Connor lit up at being positioned as the helper rather than the one needing help. "Math is just like puzzles," he explained to Emma seriously. "You have to find the pattern in the numbers." As the children chatted, Victoria found herself in an unexpected conversation with Ryan. His manner was easy and unpretentious, so different from the carefully orchestrated interactions she was used to in her business world. "Connor seems like a great kid," Ryan said, very thoughtful and mature. "Thank you," Victoria replied, then found herself adding, "Sometimes I worry he's too mature, if that makes sense." Ryan nodded knowingly. Emma went through that phase too, after her mum died. Kids can grow up too fast when they're trying to take care of the adults in their lives. The casual mention of loss hit Victoria unexpectedly. "I'm so sorry. How long has it been?" 3 years, Ryan said, his voice matter-of-fact but tinged with old sadness. "Car accident." Emma was 5. Victoria looked at the laughing little girl beside Connor and marveled at her resilience. She seemed so happy, so well-adjusted. "Kids are tougher than we think," Ryan said, watching his daughter with obvious love. "But it took time. And a lot of help from good people." Victoria nodded, hiling away this information about Ryan's character. He spoke about loss and recovery without self-pity, focusing on his daughter's well-being rather than his own tragedy. "What about you?" Ryan asked gently. "Are you and Connor's father?" "Divorced," Victoria said simply. 2 years now. Connor's father lives in New York. He sees Connor every few months when business brings him to Chicago." Ryan nodded, understanding, passing between them. 2 single parents, each navigating the challenges of raising children alone, albeit under very different circumstances. As their conversation continued, Victoria became increasingly aware of the stark differences between their worlds. Ryan mentioned working at Chicago General Hospital as a paramedic, occasionally picking up shifts at different stations around the city. He spoke about his work with passion, describing how he'd chosen emergency medicine because he wanted to help people during their most vulnerable moments. Victoria, in turn, found herself editing her own story. She mentioned running a medical technology company, but downplayed the scale and her personal wealth. Something about Ryan's straightforward honesty made her usual impressive titles and achievements feel hollow. The children's laughter drew their attention back to the table. Connor was helping Emma solve a word puzzle on her kids' menu, their heads bent together in concentration. Victoria felt a pang seeing her son's animated expression so different from his usual careful reserve. "They're getting along well," Ryan observed. "Connor doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly," Victoria admitted. "He's rather cautious around new people." "Emma has that effect on people," Ryan said with obvious pride. "She's never met a stranger. Sometimes I worry she's too trusting, but mostly I'm grateful she still sees the good in people." Victoria understood what he meant. In her world, trust was a luxury that could be exploited. But watching Connor and Emma together, she saw the beauty of Emma's open heart and its effect on her usually guarded son. As their impromptu dinner continued, Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by the children's laughter and their increasingly animated discussion of favorite books, movies, and playground games. For the first time in years, Victoria wasn't thinking about quarterly reports, board meetings, or hostile takeover attempts. She was simply present in the moment, enjoying genuine human connection with no agenda, no strategy, no carefully calculated outcomes. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The evening had taken on a dreamlike quality for Victoria. Sitting in this warm restaurant with Ryan and Emma felt like stepping into an alternate universe where conversations flowed naturally and laughter came easily. She watched Connor's face, noting how his usual careful expression had given way to genuine animation as he and Emma discovered shared interests. "We have the same favorite movie," Emma announced excitedly. "Finding Nemo." Connor likes the part where the dadfish has to be brave to save his son. "The dadfish loves his son very much." Connor added his voice, carrying a significance that made Victoria's chest tighten. Even when they get separated, he never stops looking for him. Ryan caught Victoria's eye across the table, and she saw understanding there. Connor's connection to the story wasn't lost on either adult. "That's right," Ryan said gently. "Sometimes parents and kids get separated, but love finds a way to bring them back together." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. Had she and Connor been separated by more than just her busy schedule? Had her focus on building and protecting her empire created an emotional distance that her son felt but couldn't articulate? "Mom," Connor said suddenly, turning to Victoria with bright eyes. "Emma's daddy is a paramedic. That means he helps people when they're hurt or sick. Isn't that cool?" "Very cool," Victoria agreed, looking at Ryan with new respect. "That must be challenging work." Ryan shrugged modestly. "It has its moments, but it's rewarding knowing you can make a difference when someone's having the worst day of their life." Emma jumped in enthusiastically. "Daddy saved a man who was choking at the grocery store last month. The man's wife cried happy tears and gave Daddy a big hug." "Emma," Ryan said gently, "we talked about how heroes don't brag about helping people." "But you are a hero," Emma insisted. "Mrs. Peterson at school said people who help other people are heroes, and you help people every day." Victoria watched this exchange with fascination. Ryan's humility about his life-saving work stood in stark contrast to the way people in her world promoted their achievements. Yet Emma's obvious pride in her father's character spoke to something deeper than any professional accolade Victoria had ever received. What about your mummy, Connor? Emma asked innocently. What does she do? Connor looked at Victoria uncertainly. She works with computers and medical things. She has lots of meetings and phone calls. She's very important. The description stung with its distance and formality. Connor described her career the way someone might describe a stranger's job with no personal connection or understanding of her passion for the work. I help develop medical technology, Victoria explained to Emma, choosing her words carefully. We make equipment that helps doctors take better care of their patients? Like the machines at the doctor's office, Emma asked. Exactly like that, Victoria said, warmed by Emma's genuine interest. That's really cool, Emma exclaimed. So you and Daddy both help sick people, just in different ways. The simple observation created an unexpected connection between Victoria and Ryan. They were both in helping professions, just operating at different levels of the same system. I suppose we do, Victoria said, glancing at Ryan with a small smile. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the approach of an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s. Victoria recognized her immediately. Mrs. Catherine Whitfield, wife of a major hospital board member and notable Chicago socialite. Victoria Hayes, Mint Whitfield, said, her voice carrying the kind of surprise that wasn't entirely pleasant. How unusual to see you here. I thought you preferred more exclusive dining establishments. Victoria felt her spine stiffen automatically, her corporate armor sliding back into place. Hello, Catherine. Connor and I were in the mood for something more family-friendly tonight. Mrs. Whitfield's gaze swept over their table, taking in Ryan's modest clothing and the children's casual interaction. Her expression grew increasingly puzzled and disapproving. How interesting, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. I don't believe I know your companions. The deliberate slight hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Victoria saw Ryan's jaw tighten slightly, though his expression remained carefully neutral. Emma, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents, continued coloring her menu. This is Ryan Mitchell and his daughter, Emma Victoria, said, her voice carrying a warning edge that Mrs. Whitfield would recognize from boardroom encounters. Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Whitfield acknowledged with a barely perceptible nod. And what brings you to the Heritage this evening? The question was loaded with implication, suggesting that Ryan didn't belong in this particular restaurant. Victoria felt anger flare in her chest, both at the obvious class-based prejudice and at the discomfort she could see in Ryan's expression. We're celebrating Emma's perfect spelling test, Connor piped up before Ryan could respond. She got every single word right, and she's going to have ice cream for dessert. Emma beamed at Connor's endorsement. Want to see my test? Mrs. Rodriguez said it was one of the best in the whole 3rd grade. That's wonderful, dear Mrs. Whitfield said, with the kind of condescending sweetness adults reserve for children they're trying to dismiss. Her attention returned immediately to Victoria. Victoria. I'm surprised to see you dining so informally. I hope everything is well with the company. The implication was clear. Surely Victoria must be experiencing some kind of personal or professional crisis to be dining with people so obviously beneath her social station. Everything is excellent with the company, Victoria replied coolly. I'm simply enjoying dinner with new friends. Friends? Mrs. Whitfield repeated her tone, suggesting the concept was somehow suspicious. How refreshing for you. Victoria felt her temper beginning to simmer. Mrs. Whitfield's barely concealed disdain for Ryan and Emma was triggering every protective instinct Victoria had developed in years of corporate warfare. Catherine Victoria said, her voice taking on the steely edge that made boardroom adversaries reconsider their positions. Was there something specific you needed? We're in the middle of dinner. Mrs. Whitfield's eyebrows rose at the clear dismissal, but she took the hint. Of course. Enjoy your evening. She paused, her gaze lingering meaningfully on Ryan. I do hope we'll see you at more appropriate venues in the future, Victoria. With that parting shot, she swept away toward her own table, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. I'm sorry about that, Victoria said quietly to Ryan. Catherine has very particular ideas about social hierarchies. Don't worry about it, Ryan said, but Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders. I'm used to it. The casual way he dismissed the slight broke Victoria's heart. Ryan was used to being looked down upon, used to having his worth questioned based on his appearance and profession. Emma thankfully seemed oblivious to the adult undercurrents, but Connor had clearly picked up on the tension. That lady was rude, Connor declared with unusual boldness. Emma and Mr. Ryan are nice. She shouldn't be mean to nice people. You're absolutely right, sweetheart, Victoria said, her voice fierce with pride. Kindness is more important than anything else. Emma nodded sagely. My daddy says we should always be kind to people, even when they're not kind to us. That's how we make the world better. The simple wisdom from an 8-year-old put the entire encounter into perspective. Victoria looked around the table at these 3 people who had stumbled into her carefully ordered life and seen something she'd been missing for years. Authentic human connection, real warmth, the kind of love and acceptance that couldn't be bought or strategically acquired. Emma's very wise, Victoria said softly. And Connor, I'm proud of you for standing up for your friends. Connor beamed at the praise, and Victoria felt another piece of her heart crack open. When had she stopped praising her son regularly? When had her approval become such a rare commodity that a simple compliment made him glow? So Ryan said, clearly trying to redirect the conversation to more positive territory. Connor mentioned, You like science, buddy. What's your favorite subject? As Connor launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his current fascination with marine biology, Victoria found herself studying Ryan with new appreciation. He had handled Mrs. Whitfield's obvious prejudice with dignity and grace, then smoothly moved the conversation away from uncomfortable territory to focus on the children's happiness. In her world, slights like Mrs. Whitfield's would have triggered calculated retaliation, strategic maneuvering, and carefully orchestrated social warfare. Ryan simply absorbed the hit and moved on, prioritizing peace over pride. The contrast made Victoria question everything she thought she knew about strength and success. As their dinner continued, Victoria found herself memorizing details, the way Ryan's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the gentle patience with which he helped Emma cut her dessert, the genuine interest he showed in Connor's stories. She memorized the sound of Connor's unfettered laughter, the way he leaned in close to Emma to share some secret, the animation in his voice when he felt truly heard. This was what happiness looked like, Victoria realized. Not the satisfied exhaustion of closing a major deal or the brief high of quarterly profit reports, but this warm, messy, beautiful connection between people who cared about each other. And for the first time in her adult life, Victoria wanted something she couldn't buy, couldn't strategize, and couldn't acquire through careful planning. She wanted this feeling to last forever. 2 weeks had passed since that unexpected dinner at the Heritage, and Victoria found herself thinking about Ryan and Emma far more often than made logical sense. Connor, meanwhile, had asked about them every single day, his questions growing more wistful with each passing afternoon. Do you think Emma remembers me? He asked as Victoria tucked him into bed, his blue eyes hopeful in the dim light of his bedroom. I'm sure she does. Sweetheart. Victoria replied, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. You made quite an impression on her. Could we maybe see them again sometime? Connor asked, his voice carefully neutral in the way children learn when they've been disappointed before. Victoria's heart ached at his cautious hopefulness. Would you like that? Connor nodded eagerly, his careful facade dropping. Emma was really nice, and her daddy was funny. He knew all about fish because I told him about Finding Nemo, and he told us about real fish that live in Lake Michigan. Victoria remembered that conversation, how Ryan's face had lit up as he shared his knowledge about local marine life, making Connor laugh with stories about fish with unusual names. It had been such a natural, easy interaction, the kind Connor rarely experienced with adults. Maybe we could go back to the Heritage this weekend, Victoria heard herself saying, just to see if they happen to be there. Connor's face erupted in joy. Really? You think they might be there? I don't know, Victoria admitted. But there's only one way to find out. Saturday evening found Victoria fighting an unexpected case of nerves as she and Connor walked through the Heritage's entrance. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, trading her usual power suits for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, trying to strike a balance between casual and put together. Connor practically vibrated with excitement beside her, his head swiveling as he searched the dining room for familiar faces. I don't see them, he said, disappointment creeping into his voice. Victoria felt her own disappointment sharper than she'd expected. The logical part of her mind pointed out how unlikely it would be for Ryan and Emma to be here at the exact same time, but logic seemed to matter less than the hollow feeling in her chest. That's okay, she told Connor gently. We can still have a nice dinner together. They were being seated at a table near the window when Connor suddenly grabbed Victoria's arm. Mom! There they are. Victoria's head turned toward where Connor was pointing, and her heart did something complicated when she spotted Ryan and Emma settling into a booth across the room. Emma was showing Ryan something in a small notebook, her hands gesturing animatedly. Can we go say hi, Connor? Asked, already starting to stand up. Of course, Victoria said, surprised by the relief flooding through her. They approached the table just as Emma looked up, and her face exploded into a grin when she spotted Connor. Connor, she squealed, jumping up to give him an enthusiastic hug. I was hoping we'd see you again. I brought my art journal to show you my new drawings. Ryan stood as Victoria approached his smile, warm and genuine. Victoria, Connor, what a pleasant surprise. Please join us. As they settled into the booth, Victoria marveled at how natural it felt, as if they were old friends, rather than near strangers who'd met only once before. I told everyone at school about Connor, Emma announced, about how smart he is and how he likes fish. Tommy Martinez said he wants to meet him because he likes fish too. Connor blushed at the praise but smiled broadly. I've been reading more about marine biology. Did you know that some fish can change colors? Really? Emma's eyes widened. Like chameleons, as the children launched into animated conversation about color-changing sea creatures, Victoria found herself in easy conversation with Ryan. I have to admit, she said Connor has asked about Emma every day since we met you. I think he's developed quite a friendship crush. Ryan laughed, a warm sound that made something flutter in Victoria's chest. Emma's been the same way. She made me promise to bring her back here every weekend until we saw you again. Every weekend, Victoria raised an eyebrow, amused. That could have been quite the commitment. Worth it to see her this happy, Ryan said, watching Emma explain something to Connor with elaborate hand gestures. She doesn't have many close friends at school. Being the new kid is tough. You moved here recently. About 6 months ago, Ryan explained. I transferred from the north side after Emma started having some trouble at her old school. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what a kid needs. Victoria sensed there was more to the story but didn't press. Instead, she watched Connor, hanging on Emma's every word as she described her latest art project, noting how relaxed and animated her son looked. Connor mentioned that you work at Chicago? General Victoria said. How long have you been a paramedic? About 8 years now, Ryan said. I started in emergency medicine right out of college, actually worked as an EMT during my pre-med studies. Pre-med, Victoria's eyebrows rose. Were you planning to become a doctor? Ryan's expression grew more guarded. That was the plan. Life had other ideas. Victoria heard the pain beneath his casual tone and felt an unexpected urge to comfort him. Emma's mother. Among other things, Ryan said quietly. After Sarah died, I needed work that would let me be more available for Emma. Paramedic work can be challenging, but the schedule flexibility helps with single parenting. Victoria nodded, understanding the weight of that choice. You gave up your medical school dreams for Emma. I didn't give them up, Ryan said firmly. I redirected them. I still help people still use my medical training. I just do it in a way that lets me be the father Emma needs. The conviction in his voice stirred something in Victoria's chest. She thought about her own choices, how building her empire had meant missing school plays, bedtime stories, and countless small moments that Connor had stopped expecting her to attend. That's admirable, she said softly. Not many people would make that sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice when it's for someone you love, Ryan said simply. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma's excited gasp. Connor, you have to come to my school's art show next Friday. I have 3 paintings in it, and one of them is of the ocean, with all the colorful fish you told me about. Connor turned to Victoria with hopeful eyes. Could we go? Mom? Please. Victoria felt the familiar twist of guilt. Friday evening was when she typically reviewed quarterly reports and prepared for weekend conference calls. But looking at Connor's eager face, she heard herself saying, Of course we can go. Connor's smile could have powered the entire restaurant. Really? Emma bounced in her seat. Daddy Connor's coming to my art show. That's wonderful, Em. Ryan said, his eyes meeting Victoria's with gratitude. I know how much that means to you. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself marveling at the easy dynamic that had developed between their families. Connor and Emma chatted like old friends, while she and Ryan discovered surprising common ground despite their vastly different circumstances. They both loved mystery novels, though Victoria favored psychological thrillers, while Ryan preferred classic detective stories. They both worried about raising children in an increasingly complex world, though their specific concerns differed based on their economic realities. They both believed in the importance of kindness and integrity values that seemed increasingly rare in Victoria's professional circles. I should probably get Emma home soon, Ryan said as the evening wound down. School night and all. Of course, Victoria said, feeling disappointed that their time together was ending. But before we go, Emma said, pulling out a small piece of paper from her art journal, I drew this for Connor. She handed Connor a colorful drawing of 2 fish swimming together, one blue and one orange surrounded by sea plants and bubbles. The blue fish is you because you like the ocean, Emma explained seriously. And the orange fish is me because orange is my favorite color. They're best friends who swim together and explore the whole sea. Connor stared at the drawing with wonder, holding it like it was made of precious metal. This is amazing, Emma. Thank you. I'll make you another one for your room, Emma promised. What's your favorite color? I'll make the fish that color instead. Blue is perfect, Connor said quickly. I love this exactly how it is. As they prepared to leave, Emma threw her arms around Connor in a fierce hug. See you Friday at the art show, I'll be there, Connor promised, returning the hug with equal enthusiasm. Ryan extended his hand to Victoria, but she found herself stepping forward to give him a brief, friendly hug instead. He smelled like clean soap and something indefinably masculine that made her pulse quicken. Thank you for letting Connor come to the art show, Ryan said as they stepped apart. It means the world to Emma to have a friend there. Thank you for including him, Victoria replied. I haven't seen him this excited about anything in months. As they walked to their respective cars, Connor clutched Emma's drawing carefully to his chest. Mom, he said, as Victoria started the engine. I really like Emma and her daddy. I can tell, sweetheart. I like them too. Do you think we'll be friends for a long time? Connor asked, his voice carrying the particular vulnerability of childhood hope. Victoria looked at her son's face in the rearview mirror, seeing a happiness there that had been absent for too long. I hope so, Connor, she said, honestly. I really hope so. Emma's art show had been a revelation. Victoria had watched in amazement as Connor stood proudly beside Emma, helping her explain her ocean painting to visitors, their easy friendship on full display. When Emma won a second-place ribbon for her colourful fish artwork, Connor had cheered louder than anyone else in the room. Now, a month after that first unexpected encounter at the Heritage, Victoria found herself in a situation she never could have imagined, sitting on a park bench on a Saturday morning, watching Connor and Emma play together while she shared coffee with Ryan from a thermos he'd brought. The October air was crisp and golden, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant aroma of someone grilling burgers at a family barbecue. Lincoln Park stretched around them alive, with the sounds of children playing, dogs barking, and families enjoying the weekend. Connor watched this Emma called from the playground, hanging upside down from the monkey bars with the fearless confidence of childhood. "Be careful," Connor called back, though his voice carried admiration rather than worry. "She's going to give me grey hair," Ryan muttered, but his tone was fond as he watched his daughter's acrobatics. Victoria laughed, surprised by how natural this felt. Connor's usually the cautious one. Emma's definitely bringing out his adventurous side. Emma has that effect on people, Ryan said, his green eyes warm with paternal pride. Sometimes I think she sees the world as one big adventure waiting to happen. Connor sees it as a series of problems to be solved, Victoria observed. Very different personalities, but they seem to complement each other perfectly. As if to prove her point, Connor was now helping Emma down from the monkey bars, the two of them deep in conversation about their next playground destination. "They're good for each other," Ryan agreed. Emma needs someone to help her think things through, and Connor needs someone to remind him to have fun. Victoria nodded, thinking about how much Connor had changed in just a month. He smiled more readily now, asked questions about things beyond his usual academic interests, and had even convinced Victoria to let him try soccer after Emma mentioned how much she enjoyed her weekend recreational league. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said, turning to face Ryan more directly. "Of course. What happened at Emma's old school? You mentioned she had some trouble." Ryan's expression grew more serious. "Kids can be cruel when they don't understand something. After Sarah died, Emma went through a rough patch. She was grieving, acting out sometimes, other times completely withdrawing. Some of the other parents started treating her like she was a problem, rather than a little girl in pain." Victoria felt anger flare in her chest on Emma's behalf. "That's horrible," it was Ryan agreed. "But it taught me something important. Emma needed to be around people who saw her as more than just the sad kid whose mom died. She needed to be seen as whole and wonderful and full of potential. Is that why you moved neighborhoods?" "Partly, but also because I realized I needed to see myself differently too." Ryan stared out at the playground where Emma was now teaching Connor how to properly swing across the monkey bars. "I'd gotten so caught up in being a grieving widower that I'd forgotten how to be anything else. Emma needed a dad who could smile again, who could see possibility instead of just loss." Victoria felt a pang of recognition. "I know something about that," she said quietly. Ryan looked at her with curiosity and encouragement. "After my divorce, I threw myself into work," Victoria continued. "I told myself I was building Connor's future, securing our financial stability, but really I was hiding. Work was something I could control when everything else felt chaotic. And Connor..." Victoria's throat tightened. "Connor learned to need me less. He became this perfect, self-sufficient little boy who never asked for anything because he'd figured out I was too busy to give it." "But you're here now," Ryan pointed out gently. "You've been to Emma's art show. You're spending Saturday mornings at the park. That tells me you're figuring out how to balance things." "Connor asked me a question last week that broke my heart," Victoria admitted. "He said, 'Mom, Do you think if I was better at being interesting, you'd want to spend more time with me? I realized my own son thought he was the problem. Ryan reached over and squeezed her hand briefly, the touch warm and comforting. Kids blame themselves for everything. It's not your fault that he internalized your busy schedule that way, isn't it? Victoria asked, her voice thick with guilt. I'm his mother. I'm supposed to make him feel valued and loved, not like an obligation on my calendar. You're human, Ryan said firmly. Single parenting is impossibly hard, and you've been doing it while running a company. The fact that you recognize the problem means you can fix it. Victoria looked out at Connor, who was now racing Emma to the slide, both children laughing as they climbed the ladder together. He's different with Emma, Victoria observed. More confident, more willing to try new things. It's like she's showing him how to be a kid again. Friendship is powerful medicine, Ryan agreed, especially when you find someone who accepts you exactly as you are. Something in his tone made Victoria look at him more carefully. Are we still talking about the kids? Ryan met her eyes, and Victoria felt something electric pass between them. Maybe not entirely. The moment hung between them charged with possibility and the kind of adult attraction that Victoria hadn't felt in years. Ryan's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken, and she found herself wondering what it would be like to kiss him. Daddy. Victoria. Emma's voice broke the moment as she came running toward them, Connor close behind. Connor taught me how to calculate the angle for the best slide speed. Did he now? Ryan said, his voice slightly rough as he turned his attention to the children. It's all about physics, Connor explained excitedly. The steeper the angle, the faster you go, but you have to account for friction and weight distribution. Very scientific, Victoria said, proud of her son's enthusiasm and grateful for the interruption that had saved her from potentially complicating her friendship with Ryan. Can we go get ice cream now? Emma asked. I know a place that has the best chocolate chip cookie dough flavor. If it's okay with Connor and Victoria, Ryan said, standing and brushing leaves off his jeans. Can we? Mom, Connor asked hopefully. Victoria looked at her son's bright, happy face and realized she couldn't remember the last time he'd asked her for something fun rather than practical. Of course, she said, standing as well. Lead the way, Emma. As they walked toward the ice cream shop, Emma chattering excitedly about all the different flavors, while Connor listened with rapt attention, Victoria found herself walking beside Ryan in comfortable silence. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For showing me what Connor looks like when he's truly happy. For reminding me that childhood should include joy, not just achievement. Ryan smiled, and Victoria felt that flutter in her chest again. Thank you for letting us into your life. Emma's been happier these past few weeks than I've seen her since before Sarah died. And Connor's been more himself than I've seen him since the divorce. They walked in thoughtful silence for a moment, both watching their children's easy friendship with wonder. Victoria, Ryan said as they approached the ice cream shop, Would you maybe want to have coffee sometime? Just the two of us. Victoria's heart did something complicated, equal parts excitement and terror. I'd like that, she heard herself saying. I'd like that very much. Ryan's smile was radiant, and Victoria felt like she was standing at the edge of something vast and terrifying and absolutely necessary. Inside the ice cream shop, Connor and Emma debated flavors with the serious consideration of food critics, while Victoria and Ryan exchanged glances full of promise and possibility. For the first time since her divorce, Victoria allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to let someone into her carefully guarded heart. The thought was both thrilling and absolutely terrifying. 2 months into their unlikely friendship, Victoria found herself doing something that would have been unthinkable just a few weeks earlier, sitting in a crowded elementary school auditorium, watching Emma perform in the 3rd grade production of Under the Sea, a musical celebration of ocean life that Connor had helped Emma prepare for by sharing his extensive marine biology knowledge. The auditorium buzzed with the excited energy of proud parents armed with cameras and smartphones. Victoria had arrived early to save seats, something she'd never done for any school event in Connor's life. The realization stung, but she pushed away the guilt, focusing instead on the present moment. "She's going to be the best starfish in the whole ocean," Connor whispered to Victoria, his eyes bright with anticipation. He wore a new blue sweater that Victoria had bought specifically for the occasion, wanting him to look nice for Emma's big night. "I'm sure she will be," Victoria agreed, warmth spreading through her chest at Connor's obvious excitement for his friend's performance. Ryan slid into the seat beside her, slightly out of breath from hurrying. "Sorry I'm late. Emergency call ran longer than expected. Did I miss anything?" "Just the opening announcements," Victoria assured him, noting the tired lines around his eyes. "Long shift. Apartment fire on the south side," Ryan explained quietly. "Everyone got out okay, but a family lost everything. Sometimes this job breaks your heart even when it goes right." Victoria felt a surge of admiration for Ryan's compassion. In her world, people often became inured to others' suffering, but Ryan carried the weight of every tragedy he witnessed. "The Red Cross will help them right?" she asked. "They will, but starting over from nothing." Ryan shook his head. "I can't imagine how you rebuild after losing everything." Victoria thought about her own resources, the foundation she'd established for exactly these kinds of situations. "What's the family's name?" she asked casually. "The Rodriguez family." "Why? Just curious," Victoria said, already making a mental note to have her assistant contact the Red Cross about additional funding for the family's relocation expenses. The lights dimmed before Ryan could ask follow-up questions, and the children took the stage in their elaborate sea creature costumes. Emma appeared as a bright orange starfish, her costume shimmering under the stage lights as she sang about life on the ocean floor. "She's amazing," Victoria whispered to Ryan, watching Emma's confident performance with genuine admiration. "She's been practicing that song for weeks," Ryan said, his voice thick with pride. Connor helped her with all the fish facts in her lines. Victoria looked at her son, who was mouthing along with Emma's song, clearly having memorized every word. When had Connor become so invested in someone else's success? When had he learned to support and encourage another person with such selfless enthusiasm? The answer was obvious. He'd learned it from watching Ryan. As the performance continued, Victoria found herself studying Ryan in her peripheral vision. He applauded enthusiastically at every scene, whispered encouraging comments about all the children's performances, and had tears in his eyes when Emma took her final bow. After the show, Emma bounded toward them in her starfish costume, her face glowing with post-performance adrenaline. "Did you see me? Did you see my song?" she asked breathlessly. "You were spectacular," Victoria said, meaning every word. "A real star. The best starfish I've ever seen," Connor added seriously, making Emma giggle with delight. Ryan scooped Emma into a big hug, spinning her around despite her bulky costume. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You remembered every word and looked like you were having the best time." "I was having the best time," Emma confirmed, especially because Connor and Victoria were here to watch. Victoria felt her throat tighten with emotion. When had she become so important to this little girl? When had Emma's happiness become something Victoria cared about as deeply as Connor's? "Should we celebrate with ice cream?" Ryan suggested. "Yes," Emma cheered, then looked at Victoria hopefully. "Can you and Connor come too?" Victoria looked at Connor's eager face and realized there was nowhere else she'd rather be. "Of course we can." An hour later, they sat in their now familiar booth at a local diner, Emma still in her starfish costume because she'd refused to change out of it. She regaled them with behind-the-scenes stories from the production while Connor listened with fascination. Mrs. Patterson said I projected my voice really well, Emma said proudly. She said all the parents in the back could hear every word. That's because you practiced so hard, Ryan said, stealing a French fry from Emma's plate. Hard work always pays off. Connor helped me practice, Emma said generously. He made sure I got all the fish facts right. Victoria watched her son blush with pleasure at the recognition. That was very kind of Connor, she said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. As the children chatted about upcoming school events, Victoria found herself in quiet conversation with Ryan. Thank you for including us tonight, she said. I know how special these moments are. Thank you for coming, Ryan replied. It means everything to Emma to have you both there. She talks about you and Connor constantly. Connor's the same way, Victoria admitted. Yesterday he asked me if Emma might want to come to the Natural History Museum with us next weekend. Apparently they're opening a new marine life exhibit. She'd love that, Ryan said, his eyes lighting up. And honestly, so would I. I haven't been to a museum in years. It's a date then, Victoria said, then felt her cheeks warm at her choice of words. I mean, it's a plan. A family plan. Ryan's smile grew knowing. A family plan sounds perfect. The word family hung between them, heavy with implication. Was that what they were becoming? Victoria wondered. Two broken families healing together, creating something new and unexpected. Victoria, Ryan said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Connor's father. Does he stay in touch? Is he part of Connor's life? Victoria's jaw tightened automatically. Marcus lives in New York. He sees Connor maybe 4 times a year, usually when business brings him to Chicago. He sends birthday and Christmas gifts, but... She trailed off, then decided on honesty. He's not really interested in being a father. He wanted the idea of a family more than the reality. I'm sorry, Ryan said softly. That must be hard for Connor. Connor stopped asking about him about a year ago, Victoria admitted. I think he finally figured out that disappointment was the most likely outcome. And how do you feel about that? Victoria considered the question seriously. Relieved, mostly. Marcus was never good for Connor's confidence. He had very specific ideas about what success looked like, and Connor's gentle, thoughtful nature didn't fit that mold. Connor's amazing exactly as he is, Ryan said firmly. You see that? Marcus never did. Victoria looked at her son, who was now helping Emma organize her costume jewelry into color patterns. I spent so much energy trying to make Marcus appreciate Connor that I almost missed appreciating him myself. But you see him now, Ryan observed. Thanks to you and Emma, Victoria said. Watching Connor with Emma showed me who he really is when he feels safe to be himself. Ryan reached across the table and took her hand, his touch warm and sure. He feels safe because you've created that safety. Kids don't become as kind and thoughtful as Connor without good parenting. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes at the validation. Some days I feel like I'm failing at everything that matters. Some days I feel the same way Ryan admitted. Single parenting is the hardest job in the world, and none of us get through it without making mistakes. What's your biggest parenting fear? Victoria asked, surprising herself with the intimate question. Ryan was quiet for a moment, watching Emma demonstrate some elaborate hand gesture to Connor, that she'll grow up thinking love means accepting less than you deserve because she watched me be alone for so long. I want her to believe in real partnership, in finding someone who chooses her every day. And what does that look like to you? Real partnership. Ryan's eyes met hers, and Victoria felt her pulse quicken. Someone who sees your children as a blessing, not a burden. Someone who shows up for the small moments, not just the big ones. Someone who makes you want to be better while loving you exactly as you are. Victoria felt her breath catch. That sounds wonderful. What about you? Ryan asked. What's your biggest fear? Victoria thought for a moment. That Connor will grow up thinking success means sacrificing the people you love. I don't want him to repeat my mistakes. What would you want him to learn instead? That the best achievements are meaningless without people to share them with. That kindness matters more than accomplishments. That love is worth prioritizing above everything else. They sat in comfortable silence, both watching their children's easy friendship with wonder. They're teaching us, aren't they? Victoria said softly. What do you mean, Connor and Emma? They're showing us what love looks like when it's uncomplicated, when it's just genuine care for another person's happiness. Ryan squeezed her hand. Maybe that's what we need to learn, how to love like children do. Victoria looked at their joined hands, then up at Ryan's kind green eyes. I'd like to learn that, she said quietly. With you. With me. Ryan agreed, and Victoria felt like she was standing at the beginning of something beautiful and terrifying, and absolutely right. Across the table, Connor and Emma continued their animated conversation, completely unaware that the two adults were falling for each other, as surely as they'd fallen for friendship. But maybe that was exactly how the best love stories began, with children leading the way, showing adults how to open their hearts and trust in the possibility of joy. 3 months after their first encounter, Victoria sat in the elegant private dining room of the Chicago Club, fighting waves of nausea and dizziness as board member after board member questioned her leadership decisions. The quarterly review meeting had started at 6 o'clock and was now approaching 9:30 with no end in sight. The Martinez acquisition is proceeding behind schedule and over budget. Harrison Blake said, his cold blue eyes fixed on Victoria with obvious satisfaction. Perhaps we need to reconsider whether current leadership has the vision necessary for this level of expansion. Victoria gripped her water glass, trying to steady her trembling hands. The room felt too hot, too bright, too small. Her heart was racing, and each breath felt insufficient, like she was trying to breathe through cotton. The Martinez timeline was affected by regulatory delays, Victoria said, her voice steadier than she felt. Delays that were completely outside our control and well within industry standards for acquisitions of this magnitude. Industry standards are excuses, Harrison replied smoothly. Hayes Medical Technologies used to exceed industry standards, not hide behind them. Victoria felt her chest tighten further. Harrison had been building his case against her leadership for months, questioning every decision, second-guessing every strategy. As chief financial officer, he had access to detailed information about every aspect of the company, and he was using that access to undermine her authority. Perhaps we should table this discussion for tonight, suggested Dr. Margaret Chen, the only board member who consistently supported Victoria. We've been at this for over 3 hours. I agree with Harrison's concerns, said Robert Sterling, Harrison's primary ally on the board. The stockholders are asking difficult questions about leadership effectiveness. Victoria tried to focus on Robert's words, but they seemed to be coming from very far away. The room was spinning slightly, and she felt a cold sweat breaking out across her forehead. She needed air, needed space, needed to get out of this room immediately. Excuse me, she managed to say, standing up on unsteady legs. I need a moment. Victoria. Are you all right? Chen asked, her medical training obviously picking up on Victoria's distress. I'm fine, Victoria said automatically, but as she took a step toward the door, her vision went grey around the edges. She grabbed the back of her chair for support, but her legs gave out entirely. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Harrison Blake's voice saying, "Well, this is certainly illuminating." Victoria came to consciousness slowly, aware first of cool air against her face, then of strong hands supporting her shoulders. Someone was talking to her in a calm, professional voice, but it took several moments for the words to penetrate the fog in her brain. That's it, just breathe slowly. You're going to be okay. Connor's safe. He's with Mrs. Patterson. And he asked me to tell you he loves you. Victoria's eyes fluttered open to find Ryan kneeling beside her, his green eyes full of concern and competence. She was lying on a couch in what appeared to be a private office, a cool washcloth on her forehead. "Ryan," she whispered, confusion evident in her voice. "How are you?" "Connor called me," Ryan explained gently. "He's gotten pretty good at recognizing when adults are in medical distress. Smart kid." Victoria tried to sit up, but Ryan's hand on her shoulder kept her horizontal. "I need to get back to the meeting. Harrison will use this against me." "Victoria, you just collapsed from what appears to be a severe anxiety attack, combined with hypoglycemia," Ryan said firmly. "You're not going back to any meeting tonight?" "You don't understand," Victoria said, panic creeping back into her voice. "Harrison's been waiting for something like this. Any sign of weakness, any suggestion that I'm not completely in control?" "Then Harrison's an ass," Ryan said bluntly, checking her pulse with professional efficiency. "And anyone who would use a medical emergency against you isn't worth working with." Victoria looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture and oil paintings. "Where are we private office at the Chicago Club? Dr. Chen suggested we bring you here instead of calling an ambulance. She thought you might prefer privacy." "Dr. Chen was right," Victoria said, finally managing to sit up with Ryan's help. "The last thing I need is news reports about the CEO of Hayes Medical being taken away in an ambulance." Ryan sat beside her on the couch, his expression serious. "Victoria, what triggered this?" "You said you've been under pressure, but this level of physical response suggests something more severe." Victoria felt tears threaten, but she blinked them back. "Harrison Blake has been undermining my authority for months. Every decision I make, every strategy I implement, he finds ways to question and criticize. Tonight felt like a coordinated attack." "How long has this been going on?" "Since right after we started spending time together," Victoria realized aloud. "Harrison's made several comments about my new priorities and whether I'm still fully committed to the company." Ryan's jaw tightened. "He's targeting you because of your relationship with me and Emma." "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just been waiting for any excuse to make a move against me." Ryan took her hands in his touch warm and grounding. "Victoria, look at me. What Harrison thinks about your personal life doesn't matter. What matters is that you're okay, and that Connor needs his mother healthy." "Connor," Victoria said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "Is he really okay? He must have been terrified. He was scared," Ryan admitted, but he handled it like a champion. When Dr. Chen called him to explain what was happening, he immediately asked her to call me. He said Ryan knows how to fix people and he cares about my mom. Victoria felt her throat tighten with emotion. "He called you because he trusts you to take care of me. He called me because we're family now," Ryan said simply. "All of us. Emma, Connor, you, me. When one of us is hurting, we all show up." The word family hit Victoria like a physical blow, but instead of fear, she felt overwhelming relief. For months she'd been fighting Harrison's attacks alone, carrying the weight of leadership and single parenthood without support. But Connor had known instinctively who to call when his mother needed help. "I can't go back in there tonight," Victoria said, the admission feeling like defeat. "You're not going back in there tonight," Ryan agreed. "You're going home, you're going to eat something substantial, and you're going to get some rest. The company will survive one postponed board meeting. Harrison will spin this as proof that I'm not fit to lead." "Let him try," Ryan said, his voice taking on an edge Victoria had never heard before. "Anyone with half a brain can recognize the difference between a stress response and actual incompetence. And if they can't, they don't deserve to work with you anyway." Victoria looked at Ryan's determined expression and felt something shift in her chest. For years she'd fought her battles alone, believing that independence was strength. But sitting here with Ryan feeling his unwavering support, she realized that true strength might actually be allowing people you trust to help shoulder the load. "Will you take me home?" she asked quietly. "Of course," Ryan said, helping her to her feet. "Emma's having a sleepover at her friend Sophia's house, so I'm all yours for as long as you need." As they left the Chicago club together, Victoria felt Harrison Blake's eyes on her back. She knew he would use tonight against her, would paint her collapse as evidence of weakness or instability. But for the first time in months, Victoria wasn't facing his attacks alone. She had Ryan. She had Connor's fierce love and trust. She had Emma's bright joy and unwavering friendship. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to weather whatever storm Harrison was planning to unleash. Back at Victoria's penthouse, the weight of the evening's events settled around them like a heavy blanket. Connor had fallen asleep on the living room couch while waiting for them to return Emma's hand-drawn get-well card clutched in his small fist. He didn't want to go to bed until he knew you were okay, Ryan explained softly, helping Victoria settle into the chair beside Connor's sleeping form. Victoria reached out to smooth her son's hair, noting the worry lines that had no business being on a 7-year-old's face. "I scared him." "You scared all of us," Ryan said gently. But he handled it with more maturity than most adults would have. "You've raised an incredible kid, Victoria." "Have I?" Victoria asked, her voice thick with doubt. "Or have I just taught him to take care of me when I should be taking care of him?" Ryan knelt beside her chair, his eyes serious. "Victoria, what happened tonight was a medical emergency brought on by extreme stress. That's not your fault, and it's not a sign of weakness. Harrison will see it as both." "Then Harrison's an idiot," Ryan said bluntly. "Anyone who's ever worked in emergency medicine can tell you that the strongest people often break under pressure because they've been carrying too much for too long." Victoria looked at Ryan's earnest face and felt something crack open in her chest. "I don't know how to do this, Ryan. I don't know how to be vulnerable, how to ask for help, how to let people see me as anything other than completely in control." "You're doing it right now," Ryan pointed out. "You're letting me see you scared and uncertain and human. That takes more courage than any boardroom decision you've ever made." Victoria felt tears threaten again, but this time she didn't fight them. "After Marcus left, I promised myself I'd never be dependent on anyone again. I built walls so high that Connor couldn't even reach me anymore." "What changed?" you and Emma Victoria said simply. Watching Connor with Emma, seeing how happy he could be when someone truly saw him, it made me realize how much I'd been missing. Ryan reached for her hands. "And watching you with Connor showed me that love doesn't always look the same. You love him fiercely, Victoria. You just forgot how to show it in a way he could understand. I've been so focused on building his future that I forgot to be present for his childhood," Victoria admitted. "Children don't need perfect parents," Ryan said softly. "They need present ones. Parents who show up, who admit their mistakes, who love them enough to keep trying to do better." Victoria looked at Connor's peaceful face. "What if it's too late? What if I've already damaged our relationship beyond repair?" "It's not too late," Ryan said with conviction. "Connor called me tonight because he trusts me to take care of you. That tells me he sees our families as connected as safe. He wouldn't have made that call if he didn't believe in the possibility of healing." Victoria felt a tear slip down her cheek. "I don't deserve his trust. Or yours." "Victoria," Ryan said, his voice firm but gentle. "Everyone deserves love and support, especially when they're struggling. You don't earn compassion by being perfect. You receive it by being human." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching Connor sleep. Victoria marveled at how peaceful her son looked, how much younger he appeared without the careful reserve he usually wore. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said quietly. "Anything." Before tonight, I hadn't cried in front of another adult in over 3 years. I learned to compartmentalize everything, to separate my emotions from my decisions, to never let anyone see me as anything less than completely competent. And how did that work out for you? Victoria let out a shaky laugh. I collapsed at a board meeting. I'd say the strategy has some flaws. Ryan smiled, but his expression remained serious. Victoria, what you're describing sounds like trauma response. After Marcus left, you went into survival mode, and you've been there ever since. Trauma response. When we experience betrayal or abandonment, especially in our most intimate relationships, our brains sometimes decide that emotional distance equals safety. We build walls to protect ourselves, but those same walls keep out the good stuff too. Victoria considered this. You sound like you speak from experience. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. After Sarah died, I went through something similar. I convinced myself that loving someone completely was too dangerous, that opening my heart fully meant setting myself up for devastating loss. What changed your mind, Emma? Ryan said simply. Watching her grieve, seeing how she still chose to love people even after losing her mother. She taught me that closing your heart doesn't protect you from pain. It just guarantees you'll miss out on joy. Victoria felt something fundamental shift in her understanding. So when you chose to be friends with Connor and me, I was choosing to risk loving again? Ryan confirmed, and it scared the hell out of me. Does it still scare you? Ryan looked directly at her, his green eyes full of honesty. Terrifying. But worth it. Definitely worth it. Victoria felt her pulse quicken. Ryan, I need to tell you something else. What is it tonight when I collapsed, when everything felt out of control and I didn't know who to trust or where to turn? The first person I wanted to see was you. Not my assistant, not my lawyer, not any of the people I pay to solve my problems. You. Ryan's expression grew tender. Victoria, I think I'm falling in love with you. She said the words tumbling out before she could stop them. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to love someone without losing myself in the process. Ryan reached up to cup her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. What if you didn't have to choose? What if loving someone could actually help you find yourself instead of losing yourself? Is that what you think is happening? I think, Ryan said carefully, that you've been more yourself these past few months than you've been in years. I think Connor has been more himself too. I think love doesn't diminish us when it's healthy. It expands us. Victoria felt her breath catch. And you think what we have could be healthy? I think what we have is already healthy, Ryan said softly. We see each other clearly, we support each other's growth, we put our children's well-being first, and we make each other want to be better people. That's the foundation of something really beautiful. Victoria looked at Ryan's kind face, thinking about all the ways he'd shown up for her and Connor over the past few months. He'd never tried to fix her or change her. He'd simply loved her exactly as she was, while encouraging her to become who she wanted to be. I love you too, she whispered, the admission feeling both terrifying and liberating. Ryan's smile was radiant. Yeah, Victoria confirmed, leaning forward to rest her forehead against his. I love you, and it scares me. And I don't know what comes next. What comes next, Ryan said. His voice, warm with affection, is that we figure it out together. All of us, one day at a time. As if summoned by their conversation, Connor stirred on the couch, his eyes opening slowly. When he saw Victoria and Ryan sitting together, his face relaxed with relief. Mom. "Are you feeling better?" he asked sleepily. "Much better, sweetheart," Victoria said, moving to sit beside him on the couch. "Thank you for taking such good care of me tonight. You were very brave." Connor sat up and wrapped his arms around Victoria's waist. "I was scared, but Ryan said you were going to be okay." "Ryan was right," Victoria said, looking over Connor's head at the man who had become so essential to their lives. "We're all going to be okay." And for the first time in years, Victoria actually believed it. 4 months into their relationship, Victoria should have seen it coming. Harrison Blake had been building his case methodically, gathering allies, documenting every perceived failure, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came on a crisp November evening at the Hayes Medical Technologies annual charity gala. Victoria had invited Ryan and Emma to attend, wanting them to be part of what had traditionally been one of the company's most important social events. The gala raised funds for medical research while showcasing the company's innovations to potential investors and partners. "You look beautiful," Mom Connor said, as Victoria adjusted his bow tie in their penthouse bathroom. She'd chosen an elegant navy dress that was sophisticated but not intimidating, wanting Ryan to feel comfortable among the crowd of Chicago's medical and business elite. "Thank you, sweetheart. And you look very handsome in your tuxedo." Connor grinned, clearly pleased with his formal attire. "Emma's going to love my bow tie. She said blue is her second favorite color after orange." Victoria smiled, marveling at how naturally Connor included Emma in his considerations now. "I'm sure she'll be impressed." When Ryan and Emma arrived at the penthouse, Victoria's breath caught. Ryan looked devastating in his black tuxedo, his usually casual demeanor transformed into something commanding and elegant. Emma wore a beautiful purple dress with sparkly shoes, her hair done up in an elaborate braid that Ryan had clearly worked hard to master. "Wow," Ryan said, his eyes traveling over Victoria's appearance with obvious appreciation. "You look incredible." "So do you," Victoria replied, feeling a flutter of attraction that still surprised her with its intensity. Emma and Connor immediately began comparing their formal outfits. Both children clearly excited about their first fancy adult party. "Remember," Victoria said. As they prepared to leave, "this is a business event, so there will be lots of serious adult conversation. But there will also be good food and music, and I want you both to have fun." The Union League Club had been transformed for the gala. With dramatic lighting, elegant floral arrangements, and a string quartet providing sophisticated background music. Victoria felt a familiar surge of pride as she surveyed the event. Hayes Medical Technologies' annual gala was consistently rated as one of Chicago's premier charity events. "This is amazing," Emma whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the opulent surroundings. "It's like a fairy tale. A very fancy fairy tale." Connor agreed, equally impressed. Victoria introduced Ryan and Emma to various colleagues and board members, watching with pleasure as Ryan's natural warmth and intelligence impressed everyone he met. Dr. Chen was particularly charmed by Emma's enthusiastic questions about medical research. "She's delightful," Dr. Chen told Victoria quietly. "And Ryan seems like a wonderful man. I can see why Connor's so happy lately." Everything was proceeding perfectly until Harrison Blake made his move. Victoria Harrison said, approaching their small group with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting your friends." The pause before friends was deliberate, designed to suggest something inappropriate about Victoria's relationship with Ryan and Emma. "Harrison, this is Ryan Mitchell and his daughter, Emma. Ryan is a paramedic at Chicago General. Ryan, Emma, this is Harrison Blake, our Chief Financial Officer." "Nice to meet you," Ryan said, extending his hand with genuine friendliness. Harrison's handshake was perfunctory, his attention already shifting to Victoria. "I'm surprised to see you bringing personal guests to a company event, Victoria. I thought you preferred to keep your private and professional lives separate. Victoria felt her spine stiffen at the implied criticism. Ryan and Emma are important to Connor and me. I wanted them to see what Hayes Medical Technologies does in the community. How democratic of you, Harrison said, his tone suggesting democracy was somehow distasteful. I'm sure our major donors will find your new accessibility very interesting. Before Victoria could respond, Harrison had moved away, leaving behind a tension that Emma immediately picked up on. Was that man being mean to you? Emma asked Victoria quietly. Some adults are just not very friendly, Victoria replied diplomatically, not wanting to expose the children to workplace politics. But Harrison wasn't finished. Throughout the evening, Victoria noticed him engaged in intense conversations with various board members, his expression serious and concerned. He made sure to be visible whenever Victoria laughed at something Ryan said, or when she knelt down to Emma's level to answer one of her questions. The trap was sprung during the auction portion of the evening. Victoria was on stage, announcing the final item forbid a week-long medical mission trip to Guatemala with the Hayes medical team when Harrison appeared at the microphone. Before we conclude tonight's auction, Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly through ballroom's sound system, I think it's important to address some concerns that have been brought to the board's attention. Victoria felt her blood turn to ice. This was a public forum with over 300 of Chicago's most influential people in attendance, along with medical journalists and society photographers. Whatever Harrison was planning, he'd chosen his moment for maximum impact. I'm afraid this isn't the appropriate venue for board business, Harrison, Victoria said, trying to maintain her composure. On the contrary, Harrison replied smoothly. When the CEO's personal conduct begins affecting company operations, it becomes everyone's business. A murmur ran through the crowd. Victoria could see people pulling out their phones, preparing to record whatever controversy was about to unfold. Over the past several months, Harrison continued, we've witnessed a concerning decline in leadership focus. Board meetings missed strategic decisions, delayed company priorities, seemingly shifted to accommodate personal relationships. Victoria felt the room's energy shift, hundreds of pairs of eyes, turning to study her with new scrutiny. She glanced toward the table where Ryan sat with the children, seeing Connor's confused expression and Emma's growing distress. Perhaps most concerning, Harrison said, building to his climax is the CEO's apparent need to bring her personal entanglements to company events, blurring the lines between Hayes Medical Technologies' prestigious reputation and what can only be described as inappropriate boundary management. The words hit their target perfectly. In Chicago's elite social circles, reputation was everything, and Harrison had just suggested that Victoria's relationship with Ryan was somehow scandalous or unprofessional. Victoria saw the moment the room turned against her. Society wives exchanged knowing glances. Business partners whispered among themselves. Photographers began snapping pictures with new interest, sensing scandal. This is neither the time nor the place for these allegations, Harrison Victoria said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. When is the appropriate time to address a CEO who's lost focus? Harrison asked rhetorically. When the company's board has lost confidence in current leadership? Dr. Chen stood up at her table, clearly preparing to defend Victoria, but Harrison held up his hand. Please, Dr. Chen, let's not make this more difficult than necessary. The board has scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday to discuss these concerns formally. Tonight, we simply wanted to ensure transparency with our stakeholders. Victoria felt the walls closing in around her. Harrison had orchestrated this perfectly, using the gala's public setting to force a confrontation she couldn't win. Anything she said in defense would only fuel speculation and gossip. But as she stood frozen on the stage, unsure how to respond, Connor's clear young voice cut through the ballroom's tension. My mom helps people, Connor said, standing up at his table with 7-year-old determination. She makes machines that save lives, and she works really hard to help sick people get better. Emma stood up beside him, her small hand finding his. And she's really nice to me and my daddy. She's not inappropriate. She's kind. The simplicity of their defense, the absolute conviction in their young voices shifted something in the room's energy. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes as she watched Connor and Emma stand together defending her with the fierce loyalty of children who knew her heart. Ryan stood as well, his expression calm but determined. If caring about children, supporting their friendship and choosing to include the people you love in your life is inappropriate, then this isn't a company worth defending. He took Connor's and Emma's hands. Come on, kids. Let's go somewhere that values kindness over politics. As Ryan led the children toward the exit, Victoria felt a moment of pure clarity. She could stay and fight Harrison's accusations, defend herself in front of this crowd that was already making up their minds based on gossip and innuendo. Or she could follow the man and children who had shown her what really mattered. Harrison's right about one thing, Victoria said into the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. My priorities have changed. I used to think success meant impressing people who judge others by their bank accounts and social connections. Now I know that success means surrounding yourself with people who value character over status, kindness over ambition, and love over everything else. She set down the microphone and walked off the stage, following Ryan and the children out of the ballroom. Behind her, she could hear Harrison trying to regain control of the narrative, but Victoria no longer cared what he said. For the first time in her adult life, she was choosing love over fear, connection over control, family over reputation. And as terrifying as that choice was, it felt absolutely right. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Victoria spent the weekend preparing her defense, but more importantly, she spent it learning what it meant to have people fight for her. Ryan had taken Monday off work to be with her, despite Victoria's insistence that she could handle the meeting alone. Emma was at school, but Connor had asked to stay home, claiming a stomachache that Victoria suspected was more emotional than physical. You don't have to face this by yourself, Ryan said, as they sat at Victoria's kitchen table, reviewing documents and board bylaws. Emma and I were in this with you. Ryan, if the board votes to remove me, I could lose everything, Victoria said, her voice tight with stress. My company, my income, Connor's future. You won't lose everything, Ryan said firmly. You'll still have us. You'll still be brilliant and capable and full of integrity. You'll still be the woman who built a company that saves lives. Connor looked up from his breakfast, his young face serious. Are they going to fire you? Mom? Victoria felt her heart clench. I don't know, sweetheart. Mr. Blake is trying to convince the board that I'm not doing a good job. But you are doing a good job, Connor said with conviction. You help sick people get better. How is that not good? Sometimes, Ryan said gently. Adults disagree about what's important. Mr. Blake thinks your mom should focus only on work. But your mom has learned that family is important too. Family is the most important, Connor declared. Mrs. Rodriguez at school says family is what makes you strong enough to do everything else. Victoria felt tears threaten at her son's simple wisdom. Out of the mouths of babes, she thought, remembering how isolated and cold she'd been before Ryan and Emma entered their lives. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Victoria glanced at the caller ID and felt surprise. It's Dr. Chen. Victoria. Dr. Chen's voice was crisp and professional. I'm calling to inform you that I've spent the weekend investigating Harrison's claims about your leadership performance. I think you should know what I found. Victoria put the call on speaker so Ryan could hear. What did you find? I reviewed the last 18 months of a company performance data board meeting, attendance, strategic initiative completion rates, and employee satisfaction surveys. Do you know what I discovered? What company performance has improved across every metric since you started spending time with Ryan and his daughter? Employee morale is higher, retention rates have increased, and our customer satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. Victoria felt her pulse quicken. Are you sure? Completely sure. Moreover, I contacted several of your direct reports to ask about changes in your management style. Universally, they reported that you've become more collaborative, more patient, more willing to listen to different perspectives. Ryan squeezed Victoria's hand, his expression proud and encouraging. There's more, Dr. Chen continued. I also discovered some interesting financial irregularities in Harrison's expense reports. It seems our CFO has been charging personal expenses to the company account and billing client dinners that never actually took place. Victoria felt her heart skip. Are you certain I have documentation? Harrison's been embezzling funds for the past 2 years, small amounts designed to avoid detection. I estimate he's stolen close to $300,000. Why would he do this now, then? Victoria asked. Why attack me when he's the one with something to hide? Because you've been talking about bringing in external auditors for the annual review, Dr. Chen explained. Harrison knows his theft would be discovered during a thorough audit. His only hope was to remove you before that happened. Victoria looked at Ryan, seeing her own understanding reflected in his eyes. Harrison's attack wasn't about her leadership competence. It was about his own criminal activity. Dr. Chen, can you bring this information to the board meeting, already prepared? Victoria, you're about to discover who your real allies are, and I suspect there are more of them than you realize. After ending the call, Victoria sat in stunned silence. I can't believe this, she said finally. I can, Ryan replied. Harrison's been projecting. Accusing you of the exact character flaws he possesses. It's a classic deflection technique. You sound like you speak from experience. Ryan's expression grew thoughtful. In emergency medicine, you learn to spot people who blame others for their own mistakes. Usually they're the most dangerous ones in a crisis because they're more concerned with covering their tracks than solving the actual problem. Like Harrison. Exactly like Harrison. Connor had been listening to this conversation with the intense focus of a child trying to understand adult complexities. So Mr. Blake was lying about Mom. Mr. Blake was stealing from the company and trying to blame your mom to hide his own crimes, Ryan explained gently. That's not fair, Connor exclaimed with righteous indignation. No, it's not fair, Victoria agreed. But sometimes life isn't fair, and we have to fight for what's right. Are you going to fight for what's right? Connor asked. Victoria looked at her son's trusting face, then at Ryan's supportive expression. 3 months ago, she would have fought this battle alone, armed with nothing but corporate strategy and cold determination. Now she had something much more powerful, people who believed in her character, not just her competence. Yes, Victoria said firmly. We're going to fight for what's right. The boardroom felt different when Victoria walked in at 9 o'clock Monday morning. Instead of feeling like hostile territory, it felt like a courtroom where truth would finally prevail. Dr. Chen was already seated, a thick folder of documents in front of her. Several board members who rarely attended meetings were present, their expressions serious and concerned. Harrison Blake sat at the head of the table, his usual confident demeanor slightly strained. He'd clearly expected a quick, clean victory, not the determined resistance he was now facing. Thank you all for coming, Harrison began. As I outlined in Friday's communication, we're here to address serious concerns about leadership effectiveness and corporate priorities. Before we proceed, Dr. Chen interrupted. I have information the board needs to review regarding financial irregularities that have come to light during my weekend investigation. Harrison's face went pale. I don't think this is the appropriate time for financial reports, Margaret. On the contrary, Dr. Chen replied coolly. When the CFO has been embezzling company funds, it becomes the most appropriate time. The room erupted in surprised murmurs as Dr. Chen distributed copies of her findings to each board member. Victoria watched Harrison's carefully constructed facade crumble as the evidence of his theft was laid out in methodical detail. "This is preposterous," Harrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "These are accounting errors, nothing more. Accounting errors don't explain why you billed the company for personal vacations," Dr. Chen replied, "or why you've been inflating client dinner expenses for meals that never occurred." Board member after board member reviewed the evidence, their expressions growing increasingly stern. Victoria felt a weight lifting from her shoulders as she realized Harrison's accusations against her leadership had been nothing more than desperate deflection. Furthermore, Dr. Chen continued, "I've reviewed actual company performance metrics for the past 18 months. Contrary to Harrison's claims about declining leadership effectiveness, every major indicator shows improvement. Employee satisfaction is up 23%. Customer retention has increased, and our innovation pipeline is stronger than it's been in 5 years. Robert Sterling." Harrison's primary ally looked up from the financial documents with disgust. "Harrison, these charges show clear intent to defraud. How do you explain billing $8,000 in fake client dinners?" Harrison's composure finally cracked entirely. "This is a setup. Victoria's trying to frame me because she knows I discovered her inappropriate relationship with that paramedic." "Inappropriate how?" Dr. Chen asked sharply. "By bringing joy back into her life, by becoming a better parent to Connor, by modeling healthy relationships for her son Victoria," felt her throat tighten with gratitude. Dr. Chen wasn't just defending her professional competence, she was defending her right to personal happiness. Harrison said, "Mrs. Elizabeth Morrison, the board's longest-serving member, I've known Victoria for 8 years. I've watched her build this company with intelligence, integrity, and tireless dedication. If she's found personal happiness that makes her stronger, not weaker." Moreover, added Dr. Chen, "I've spoken with several employees who've reported that Victoria's management style has become more collaborative and supportive since she began her relationship with Ryan. Good leadership includes emotional intelligence, not just strategic thinking." Harrison looked around the table, realizing his support had evaporated completely. "You're all making a mistake. Victoria's priorities have shifted. She's not the leader this company needs." "You're right," Victoria said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. "My priorities have shifted. I've learned that a company culture built on fear and isolation produces inferior results compared to one built on trust and collaboration. I've learned that personal happiness makes me a better leader, not a worse one, and I've learned that anyone who tries to use love against me isn't someone I want as a colleague." The room fell silent as Victoria's words settled. Then Mrs. Morrison began to clap, followed by Dr. Chen, then the rest of the board members one by one. "Harrison Blake," Mrs. Morrison said formally, "you are terminated from your position effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building, and we will be forwarding evidence of your embezzlement to the appropriate authorities." As security led Harrison away, his face twisted with rage and defeat, Victoria felt a profound sense of justice. Not because her enemy had fallen, but because truth had prevailed over deception, integrity over corruption, love over fear. "Victoria," Mrs. Morrison said as the room cleared on behalf of the entire board, "I owe you an apology. We should have seen through Harrison's manipulation much sooner." "Thank you," Victoria replied, "but I learned something important from this experience. I can't lead effectively while hiding who I really am. My relationship with Ryan and Emma has made me a better person and a better leader, and I won't apologize for that." Dr. Chen smiled. "Nor should you. The Victoria Hayes who walked into this room today is the leader this company needs, strong, authentic, and unafraid to fight for what's right." As Victoria left the boardroom, her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan Sonner. "Wants to know if you won. Emma made a victory for Victoria sign, just in case." Victoria smiled, typing back. "Tell them both that we all won today. Truth, justice, and love always win in the end." And for the first time in her professional life, Victoria absolutely believed it. The Hayes Medical Technologies office building hummed with a different energy these days. Victoria could feel it as she walked through the hallways, greeting employees who smiled genuinely rather than offering the careful, calculated respect she'd once commanded through fear and distance. It was a crisp April morning, 6 months after Harrison Blake's dramatic downfall and arrest. The embezzlement charges had stuck, resulting in a 5-year prison sentence that sent a clear message throughout Chicago's business community about the consequences of corporate fraud. Victoria paused at the employee break room, watching through the glass doors as several staff members collaborated on what appeared to be a birthday celebration for one of their colleagues. The scene would have been unthinkable under her old leadership style, when personal connections were discouraged and efficiency was valued above all else. "Victoria, do you have a minute?" Dr. Chen appeared at her elbow, tablet in hand, and expression bright with excitement. "Of course. What's got you looking so energized this morning?" "The employee satisfaction survey results came in," Dr. Chen said, practically bouncing. "I think you're going to want to see these numbers." They walked to Victoria's office, which had been redesigned over the past few months to be less intimidating and more welcoming. The imposing mahogany desk had been replaced with a more modest setup that included a comfortable conversation area where Victoria now held most of her meetings. "Overall satisfaction is up 38% from last year," Dr. Chen announced, pulling up the survey data. "But look at these specific categories." Victoria studied the tablet screen, her eyebrows rising with each metric. Employee trust in leadership up 45%. Workplace collaboration up 52%. Work-life balance satisfaction up 60%. "These numbers are incredible," Victoria said, genuinely amazed. "What do you think changed?" "You changed," Dr. Chen said simply. "When you started prioritizing your own well-being and personal relationships, it gave everyone else permission to do the same. People aren't afraid anymore that caring about their families will be seen as a lack of commitment." Victoria thought about the policy changes she'd implemented over the past 6 months. Flexible scheduling for parents' on-site childcare during school breaks, mental health support programs, and a company culture that celebrated personal milestones alongside professional achievements. "There's more," Dr. Chen continued. "Productivity is actually higher than it was under the old approach. Turns out people work better when they feel valued as human beings, not just revenue generators." "Who could have imagined," Victoria said with gentle sarcasm, thinking about all the leadership consultants who'd advised her to maintain emotional distance from her employees. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Victoria Ryan's here for your lunch date. Should I send him in?" Victoria felt the familiar flutter of happiness that always accompanied Ryan's arrival. "Please do." Ryan entered carrying a picnic basket and wearing the easy smile that never failed to make Victoria's heart skip. He'd taken a position as the head of emergency medical training at Northwestern Memorial, a job that allowed him to use his expertise while maintaining the schedule flexibility he needed as Emma's father. "How's my favorite CEO doing today?" Ryan asked, setting down the basket and greeting Victoria with a kiss that was both casual and intimate. "Better now," Victoria said honestly. "Dr. Chen was just showing me the employee satisfaction numbers. Apparently happiness is good for business." "Shocking development," Ryan said with mock surprise. "Next you'll tell me that treating people with respect and kindness leads to better outcomes." Dr. Chen laughed. "I'll leave you two to your lunch. Victoria, we should celebrate these numbers. Maybe a company-wide appreciation event?" "That sounds perfect," Victoria agreed. "Something fun that includes families." After Dr. Chen left, Ryan unpacked their lunch on the small table by Victoria's office window. Chicago spread out below them, the city looking particularly vibrant in the spring sunshine. "How are Emma and Connor adjusting to the new after-school program?" Victoria asked, referring to the art and science enrichment classes the children had started attending together. "Emma loves the art component, obviously. And Connor's become the star of the junior marine biology group," Ryan replied. "Their teacher says they work together like a perfect team. They've been practicing for the spring talent show," Victoria said. "Connor's doing a presentation about ocean conservation, and Emma's creating the visual displays. They're very secretive about the whole thing." "Emma made me promise not to peek at her sketches," Ryan agreed. "Apparently it's going to be the most important presentation in elementary school history." Victoria smiled, marveling at how naturally their children's lives had intertwined. Connor and Emma were inseparable now, their friendship having deepened into something that looked remarkably like sibling affection. "Speaking of the children," Ryan said, his tone becoming more serious, "I wanted to talk to you about something." Victoria felt a flutter of concern. "What is it? Emma asked me a question yesterday that I wasn't sure how to answer." "What kind of question?" Ryan took Victoria's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "She wanted to know if you and I were going to get married so that she and Connor could be real brother and sister." Victoria's breath caught. In the 6 months since Harrison's takedown, she and Ryan had grown closer in every possible way. They spent most evenings together, either at his modest house or her penthouse. The children often fell asleep during movie nights, creating a domestic tranquility that felt more natural than any relationship Victoria had ever experienced. But they hadn't talked explicitly about marriage, despite the fact that they were living like a family already. "What did you tell her?" Victoria asked. "I told her that adults sometimes need time to make sure they're making the right decisions for everyone involved," Ryan said. "But she pointed out that we already act like a family. So what exactly are we waiting for?" Victoria felt her heart race. "What are we waiting for?" Ryan studied her face, his green eyes serious. "I love you, Victoria. I love Connor like he's my own son. I love the life we've built together, and I can't imagine a future that doesn't include all of us. But I need to know that you're ready for forever. Not just the idea of forever, but the reality. Shared financial decisions, combining households, being legally connected in a way that means we're truly partners." Victoria considered his words, thinking about how much her life had changed since that first dinner at the Heritage. She'd gone from a woman who controlled every aspect of her existence to someone who found joy in sharing decisions, responsibility, and daily life with another person. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "The last time I trusted someone completely, he left me when things got complicated." "I'm not." "Marcus," Ryan said gently, "I know. But what if I'm too damaged? What if my need for control ruins what we have?" Ryan leaned forward, his expression tender. "Victoria, do you trust me completely? Do you believe I love Connor? I know you do. Do you believe I love you exactly as you are? Control issues and all?" Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes." "Then what are you really afraid of?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, searching her heart for honest answers. "I'm afraid that if we make it official, if we combine our lives legally and financially, you'll see parts of me that you don't like. I'm afraid that having that level of commitment will change the dynamic between us. How might it change things? What if you start to resent my success? What if the financial disparity between us becomes a problem? What if you feel like you're living in my world instead of us building something together?" Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Those are valid concerns. Can I address them? Please. First, I fell in love with your success, not in spite of it. Watching you lead, seeing your intelligence and determination, recognizing your commitment to making the world better through your work, that's part of what I love about you. I would never want you to diminish yourself. Victoria felt some tension release from her shoulders. Second, yes, there's a financial disparity between us, but we're both contributing what we can to our relationship. You bring financial resources, I bring other kinds of support. Emma's happiness, Connor's confidence, your own personal growth, those things have value that can't be measured in dollars. And third, I'm not interested in living in your world or having you live in mine. I want us to build our world together. A place where Connor and Emma feel equally valued, where both our careers matter, where decisions are made together. Victoria felt her defenses dissolving. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Complicated to execute sometimes, but simple in concept. We love each other, we love our children, we want to build a life together. Everything else is just details we can figure out along the way. Victoria looked out the window at the city below, thinking about all the ways her life had improved since Ryan and Emma entered it. She was happier, more authentic, a better mother and a better leader. The woman who'd collapsed from stress and loneliness 6 months ago felt like a different person entirely. Ryan, she said slowly. If you were going to propose to someone, hypothetically, how would you do it? Ryan's smile was radiant. Hypothetically. I think I'd want the children to be involved since they're the ones who brought us together in the first place. And I'd want it to be somewhere meaningful, somewhere that represented the journey we'd taken together. Victoria felt her pulse quicken with excitement and possibility. That sounds perfect. Hypothetically. Hypothetically, Ryan agreed, leaning over to kiss her softly. But I think we should probably stop talking hypothetically soon. How soon? Ryan's eyes twinkled with mischief. Check your calendar for this Friday night. I believe you have dinner plans at the Heritage Restaurant. Victoria's heart soared as understanding dawned. I love you, Ryan Mitchell. I love you too, Victoria Hayes, and I can't wait to love you for the rest of our lives. 8 months after Victoria's first encounter with Ryan and Emma at the Heritage Restaurant, the FBI Financial Crimes Unit contacted Hayes Medical Technologies. What had begun as a routine follow-up on Harrison Blake's embezzlement case had uncovered something far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Victoria sat in the conference room with her legal team listening as Special Agent Sarah Martinez outlined the scope of the investigation that had grown from Harrison's initial theft. Mr. Blake's embezzlement was just the beginning. Agent Martinez explained, spreading documents across the table. When we seized his financial records, we discovered evidence of a much larger conspiracy involving several pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers. Dr. Chen, who had been instrumental in exposing Harrison's initial crimes, leaned forward with interest. What kind of conspiracy, price-fixing, bid-rigging and fraud designed to inflate medical equipment costs across the Midwest? Agent Martinez replied. Harrison was feeding inside information about Hayes Medical's pricing strategies to competitors, allowing them to underbid on contracts while maintaining artificially high prices in other markets. Victoria felt her stomach drop. How long had this been going on? Our forensic accountants estimate at least 3 years, possibly longer. The scheme was sophisticated and involved multiple companies across 5 states. What does this mean for Hayes Medical? Victoria's lead attorney asked. Agent Martinez smiled slightly. Actually, your company is considered a victim in this case. Harrison's actions cost Hayes Medical an estimated $12 million in lost contracts and revenue. More importantly, his conspiracy kept medical equipment prices artificially high, ultimately harming hospitals and patients. Victoria felt a complex mix of vindication and anger. Harrison's campaign against her leadership hadn't just been about covering his embezzlement, It had been about protecting a criminal enterprise that was literally putting profits before patients. "There's more," Agent Martinez continued. "Harrison's phone records show he was in regular contact with several board members from competing companies. We believe he was feeding them information about Victoria's strategic plans. Her personal life, even details about her relationship with Ryan." "My personal life." Victoria's voice sharpened with anger. "What business was that of competing companies? They saw your relationship as a potential vulnerability." Agent Martinez explained. "A way to distract you or undermine your reputation. Harrison fed them information about Ryan's background, Emma's school activities, your family dinners. They were building files on all of you." Dr. Chen's expression grew fierce. "They were targeting Connor and Emma children, not directly threatening them, but monitoring their schedules, their activities, looking for ways to use your family connections against Hayes Medical." Victoria felt fury building in her chest. It was one thing to attack her professionally, but involving Connor and Emma in their schemes crossed every ethical line. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "The Department of Justice is prosecuting this as a major RICO case. Harrison and 6 executives from competing companies are facing federal conspiracy charges. The financial penalties alone will run into the hundreds of millions. And the companies involved? Several will likely face criminal charges as organizations. Others are cooperating with the investigation in exchange for leniency. The entire medical device pricing structure in the Midwest is going to be investigated and potentially restructured." Victoria sat back in her chair, processing the scope of what Harrison had been involved in. His attacks on her leadership, his attempts to use her relationship with Ryan against her, his undermining of her authority. All of it had been designed to protect a criminal conspiracy that was harming healthcare access across the region. Agent Martinez Victoria said slowly, "Harrison tried to paint my relationship with Ryan as proof that I wasn't fit to lead the company. He used my personal happiness as evidence of professional incompetence. Was that part of the conspiracy strategy?" "Absolutely. Their plan was to remove you from Hayes Medical and replace you with someone they could control. They saw your integrity and ethical standards as obstacles to their price-fixing scheme." Dr. Chen laughed bitterly. "So Harrison attacked Victoria for finding love and prioritizing her family because those things made her less likely to participate in criminal activity." "Essentially, yes. Corrupt business practices require leaders who are isolated, paranoid, and willing to prioritize profits over principles. Victoria's personal growth and ethical evolution made her a threat to their entire operation." Victoria felt a profound sense of validation. Every instinct that had told her Harrison was more than just a disgruntled colleague had been correct. His campaign against her hadn't been about leadership competence. It had been about her unwillingness to compromise her values. "Will we be able to recover the money?" "Harrison cost us?" Dr. Chen asked. "The restitution hearing will address that," Agent Martinez said. "But given the scope of the conspiracy, Hayes Medical will likely receive substantial compensation. More importantly, the prosecution of this case is going to reform the entire industry." That evening, Victoria shared the day's revelations with Ryan as they prepared dinner together in his kitchen. Connor and Emma were at the table working on homework while keeping up a steady stream of conversation about their upcoming talent show. "I can't believe Harrison was part of something so extensive," Ryan said, stirring pasta sauce while Victoria chopped vegetables. "It explains why he was so desperate to get you out of the way. What bothers me most is that they were monitoring you." And Emma, Victoria said, her knife work becoming more aggressive as she processed her anger. "They were watching our children to find ways to use them against me." "But they failed," Ryan pointed out. "Their entire strategy was based on the assumption that love and family connections make people weaker. They never considered that those same connections might make you stronger." Victoria paused in her chopping, considering Ryan's observation. "You're right. Everything they saw as a vulnerability. My relationship with you, my love for Emma, my commitment to being a better mother to Connor, those things actually made me a better leader. Because authentic leadership requires emotional intelligence and genuine caring. Ryan agreed. You can't inspire loyalty and trust if you're emotionally disconnected from the people you're leading. Connor looked up from his math homework. Are you talking about Mr. Blake again? We are, sweetheart, Victoria confirmed. We found out today that he was involved in even more serious crimes than we originally thought. Good, Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. Mean people should get in trouble for being mean. It's not quite that simple, Ryan said gently. But yes, people who break the law and hurt others should face consequences. Will this be over soon? Connor asked. I don't like thinking about Mr. Blake trying to hurt our family. Victoria felt her heart squeeze at Connor's description of them as our family. When had that happened? When had Connor stopped thinking of Ryan and Emma as friends and started considering them family? It should be over soon, Victoria assured him. And Mr. Blake can't hurt any of us anymore. Because we stick together, Emma added seriously. Families stick together when bad things happen. That's exactly right, Ryan confirmed, catching Victoria's eye with a look that said everything about their shared commitment to protecting these children and building something lasting together. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Victoria and Ryan sat on his back porch sharing a bottle of wine and processing the day's revelations. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't met that night at the Heritage? Victoria asked. All the time, Ryan admitted. Harrison probably would have succeeded in removing you from the company. The corruption would have continued. Connor would still be that sad, lonely little boy I saw cutting pasta by himself. And you and Emma, we'd still be managing our grief alone, missing out on the joy Connor and you have brought to our lives. Victoria curled closer to Ryan on the porch swing, feeling grateful for the chain of coincidences that had brought them together. Sometimes I wonder if the universe conspired to put us in each other's path exactly when we needed each other most. Maybe it did, Ryan said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Or maybe we were just ready to recognize love when it finally showed up. Victoria thought about the woman she'd been 8 months ago, successful, but isolated, competent, but cold, providing for Connor's future while missing his present. That woman never could have imagined the happiness and fulfillment she'd found with Ryan and Emma. I'm grateful Harrison failed, Victoria said quietly. Because justice prevailed. Because love prevailed. His whole strategy was based on the belief that caring about people makes you weak. But loving you and Emma and Connor has made me stronger than I've ever been. Ryan's arms tightened around her. Strong enough to take on federal conspiracies, apparently. Victoria laughed. Strong enough for whatever comes next. And sitting there in the quiet darkness surrounded by the sounds of the neighborhood, Ryan and Emma called home, Victoria felt ready for whatever their future might hold. 10 months after their first meeting at the Heritage restaurant, Victoria stood outside the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, surrounded by news crews and federal prosecutors, preparing for what the media had dubbed the trial of the decade in healthcare fraud. Harrison Blake's conspiracy had unraveled, completely exposing a network of corruption that reached into 12 major medical corporations across 6 states. The Department of Justice had built their case methodically, with Victoria's company serving as the primary example of how the conspiracy had harmed legitimate businesses and ultimately patient care. Ryan stood beside Victoria on the courthouse steps, his presence a source of strength and calm amid the media frenzy. Connor and Emma were at school, but they'd created a good luck banner the night before that currently hung in Victoria's office as a reminder of what she was fighting for. Ms. Hayes, a reporter, called out, "How does it feel to know that Harrison Blake's attack on your personal life was part of a larger criminal conspiracy?" Victoria looked directly into the camera, her voice steady and clear. It reinforces something I've learned over the past 10 months, that integrity and authenticity in leadership are not just personal values, they're business necessities. Companies that prioritize profits over people, that reward deception over honesty, create the exact conditions that allow this kind of corruption to flourish. Are you saying that your relationship with Ryan Mitchell made you a better CEO? Victoria felt Ryan's hand briefly touch her back in support. I'm saying that leaders who are emotionally healthy, who have strong personal relationships and ethical foundations, are much harder to corrupt than leaders who are isolated and driven solely by financial metrics. Federal Prosecutor James Wright stepped forward. We should head inside. The trial begins in 20 minutes. As they walked through the courthouse corridors, Victoria marveled at how different she felt compared to that night 10 months ago when she'd collapsed at the board meeting. Then she'd been fighting Harrison's attacks alone, armed with nothing but corporate strategy and desperate determination. Now she had Ryan's unwavering support, Connor's fierce love, Emma's bright optimism, and a legal team backed by the full weight of federal law enforcement. The courtroom was packed with journalists, federal investigators, and executives from medical companies across the region. Victoria took her seat in the witness section, noting Harrison Blake at the defendant's table. He looked diminished somehow, his usual arrogant confidence replaced by the grim awareness of someone facing decades in federal prison. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Rodriguez, the bailiff announced. Judge Rodriguez was known for her no-nonsense approach to white-collar crime and her particular disdain for corruption that harmed healthcare access. Victoria felt confident that justice would be served. Prosecutor Wright's opening statement was devastating in its precision. He methodically outlined how Harrison and his co-conspirators had rigged medical equipment bids, shared proprietary information, and manipulated pricing structures to maximize profits while making essential medical devices more expensive for hospitals and patients. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Wright concluded, this case is about more than financial fraud. It's about a conspiracy that deliberately made healthcare more expensive and less accessible for millions of people across the Midwest. These defendants put their profits before patients' lives, and they must be held accountable. When Victoria was called to testify, she felt a moment of nervous energy before Ryan's encouraging nod reminded her of her purpose. She wasn't just testifying for her company, she was speaking for every patient who'd been harmed by artificially inflated medical costs. Hayes, Prosecutor Wright began. Can you describe Harrison Blake's campaign against your leadership? Victoria took a breath, then began the story she'd lived through. Mr. Blake undermined my authority by questioning every strategic decision, every policy change, and ultimately my personal relationships. He painted my commitment to work-life balance and ethical business practices as evidence of weakened leadership. Did you understand at the time why he was targeting these aspects of your leadership? I thought he was simply trying to remove me from the company. I didn't realize that my commitment to ethical practices and transparent pricing was threatening a much larger criminal enterprise. Wright presented evidence of Harrison's phone calls to competing companies, sharing Hayes Medical's pricing strategies and strategic plans. He showed emails where Harrison described Victoria's relationship with Ryan as a useful distraction that could be exploited to undermine board confidence. Mr. Blake saw your personal happiness as a weakness to exploit, Wright asked. He did, but he was wrong. Having strong personal relationships and clear ethical boundaries actually made me a better leader, not a weaker one. During cross-examination, Harrison's defense attorney tried to paint Victoria as vindictive, claiming her testimony was motivated by revenge rather than justice. Ms. Hayes, isn't it true that you've benefited professionally from Mr. Blake's downfall? Victoria looked the attorney directly in the eye. I've benefited from the truth coming to light. Hayes Medical has benefited from operating without a criminal conspiracy driving up industry costs. Most importantly, patients across the Midwest have benefited from the exposure of this price-fixing scheme. But you personally have gained reputation and influence by positioning yourself as a victim. Objection right interrupted. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Rodriguez ruled. Victoria continued calmly. I'm not positioning myself as anything other than what I am, a business leader who refused to participate in criminal activity and was targeted because of that refusal. The trial continued for 2 weeks with testimony from FBI financial analysts, medical industry experts, and executives from the companies involved in the conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Harrison and his co-conspirators had stolen millions of dollars while making medical equipment more expensive for hospitals, clinics, and ultimately patients. When the defense rested, Harrison Blake took the stand in his own defense. Victoria watched with a mixture of fascination and disgust as he attempted to portray himself as a scapegoat, claiming he'd been pressured into illegal activity by more powerful executives. Mr. Blake, his attorney, asked, "Did you ever intend to harm patients or healthcare access through your actions?" "Never," Harrison replied, his voice carrying the practiced sincerity of a skilled liar. "I was trying to ensure Hayes Medical remained competitive in a challenging market." "And your concerns about Ms. Hayes's leadership, were those legitimate business concerns? I believed that Ms. Hayes had become distracted by personal relationships and was no longer focused on the company's financial performance." Victoria felt Ryan's hand squeeze hers as Harrison continued his lies. But Wright said during cross-examination, "Your phone records show you discussing Ms. Hayes's relationship with Ryan Mitchell, with executives from competing companies. How does that relate to Hayes Medical's financial performance?" Harrison's composure cracked slightly. "I was concerned that personal relationships were affecting her judgment." Affecting her judgment, how specifically she was implementing policies that prioritized employee satisfaction over profit margins. Wright smiled coldly. "Policies like fair wages, healthcare benefits, and ethical business practices. Policies that reduced competitiveness." Harrison replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Mr. Blake, isn't it true that Ms. Hayes's reduced competitiveness made her unwilling to participate in your price-fixing scheme?" "Objection," Harrison's attorney shouted. "Sustained, but I'll allow the question in different form," Judge Rodriguez ruled. Wright rephrased. "Mr. Blake, did Ms. Hayes ever refuse to share pricing information with competing companies?" Harrison's face went pale. She believed in maintaining competitive confidentiality, even when you suggested that sharing such information would be mutually beneficial." "Yes." "And did her refusal to participate in information sharing affect your opinion of her leadership?" Harrison was trapped, and everyone in the courtroom could see it. Perhaps he admitted quietly. Victoria felt a surge of vindication. Harrison's own testimony had just confirmed that her ethical standards had made her a target, not her competence. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, their verdict was swift and decisive, guilty on all counts for Harrison Blake and 5 of his co-conspirators. Judge Rodriguez's sentencing was equally decisive. "Mr. Blake, your crimes represent a particularly egregious betrayal of trust. As a chief financial officer, you were entrusted with protecting your company's interests, and by extension, the interests of the patients your company serves. Instead, you chose personal profit over professional ethics, and your actions harmed both your company and the broader healthcare system." She sentenced Harrison to 12 years in federal prison with restitution payments that would likely bankrupt him personally. As Victoria left the courthouse surrounded by reporters asking for her reaction, she felt a profound sense of closure. "Mrs. Hayes, what's next for Hayes Medical Technologies?" one journalist called out. Victoria paused on the courthouse steps, Ryan beside her. the afternoon sun warm on her face. "We're going to continue doing what we've always done, developing medical technology that saves lives and improves patient outcomes. The difference is that now we can do it without worrying about criminal conspiracies undermining our industry." Any comment on Harrison Blake's sentence, justice was served. Mr. Blake will have time to reflect on the consequences of putting profits before principles. That evening, Victoria and Ryan celebrated quietly at home, with Connor and Emma sharing pizza and stories about their respective days. The children had created congratulatory cards, complete with Emma's colorful drawings and Connor's carefully researched facts about the legal system. "So the bad man won't try to hurt you anymore?" Emma asked seriously. "The bad man is going to prison for a very long time," Victoria confirmed. "And we have laws in place now to prevent other people from doing the same bad things." "Good," Connor declared with satisfaction. "Now we can just be a normal family without worrying about criminals." Victoria and Ryan exchanged amused glances. If only Connor knew what lay ahead for their family, it would be many things, but normal probably wasn't one of them. "Speaking of family," Ryan said, his eyes twinkling with mischief, "I believe we have some exciting plans for this weekend." Victoria felt her heart skip, knowing exactly what Ryan was referring to. Friday night at the Heritage Restaurant, the proposal she'd been anticipating and hoping for since their conversation in her office weeks earlier. Very exciting plans, Victoria agreed, watching Connor and Emma's curious expressions. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Victoria knew they would face them together. Justice had prevailed, love had triumphed, and their future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. The Heritage Restaurant looked exactly as it had 1 year ago, when Victoria first spotted Ryan cutting pasta for a laughing Emma, but everything else had changed completely. Victoria sat at the same corner table where Connor had first approached Emma, watching her son and Ryan's daughter put the finishing touches on their elaborate proposal plan. "Are you sure the ring is in the right pocket?" Emma whispered urgently to Connor, her 8-year-old face serious with the weight of their secret mission. "I checked 3 times. Connor assured her, patting the small bulge in his dress jacket. "Daddy showed me exactly how to hold the box, so Victoria can see the ring properly." Victoria pretended not to hear their whispered consultation, marveling at how naturally they'd taken ownership of their parents' love story. For the past month, Emma and Connor had been planning every detail of this evening with the meticulous attention of professional event coordinators. Ryan appeared in the restaurant doorway, looking devastatingly handsome, in the same black suit he'd worn to their first formal event together. His eyes found Victoria's immediately, and the smile that spread across his face made her pulse quicken, just as it had a year ago. But there was something different tonight. A nervous energy, an excitement that made Victoria's hands tremble slightly as she smoothed her dress, the same navy blue dress she'd worn to their first dinner at the Heritage, chosen deliberately for its significance. "Sorry I'm late," Ryan said, sliding into the booth beside Victoria and greeting both children with elaborate high fives. "Emergency call ran long." "No problem," Victoria replied, though her heart was racing with anticipation. "Connor and Emma have been entertaining me with stories about their talent show preparation. Our presentation is going to be amazing," Emma declared. "We're going to teach the whole school about ocean conservation and why it's important to protect marine life." It was Emma's idea to include audience participation, Connor added proudly. "We're going to have props and everything." As their dinner progressed, Victoria found herself memorizing details, the way Ryan's eyes crinkled when he laughed at Emma's elaborate story about her art teacher's pet hamster. The comfortable rhythm of conversation between all 4 of them, the easy way Connor and Emma had learned to share space and attention without rivalry or jealousy. This was family Victoria realized, not the carefully orchestrated perfection she'd once imagined, but something better, authentic, warm, occasionally chaotic, and absolutely essential. "Victoria," Emma said, suddenly her voice taking on the formal tone she used for important announcements. Connor and I need to ask you something very serious. Of course, sweetheart. What is it? Emma and Connor exchanged significant glances. Then Connor pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket with the careful reverence of someone handling precious cargo. We want to know, Connor said solemnly, if you'll marry my daddy so we can all be a real family forever. Victoria's breath caught as Connor opened the box to reveal an elegant solitaire diamond ring, classic and beautiful and absolutely perfect. And we want to know, Emma added with equal seriousness, if you'll be my new mummy, because I love you very much, and Connor needs a sister. Victoria looked around the table at these three people who had transformed her life so completely, her eyes filling with tears that blurred her vision. Ryan was watching her with an expression of love so profound it made her chest ache with happiness. We know this is a big decision, Connor continued with the gravity of someone much older, but Emma and I have discussed it very carefully, and we think we'd make an excellent family. The best family, Emma corrected, because we already love each other so much. Victoria reached for the ring box, her hands trembling as she held it. This is the most beautiful proposal I've ever received, she said, her voice thick with emotion. And yes, absolutely yes, I will marry your daddy. And yes, she continued, looking directly at Emma. I would be honored to be your new mummy, if you're sure that's what you want. Emma's face erupted in pure joy. Really? You really want to be my mummy? I already feel like your mummy. Victoria admitted, I love you exactly as much as I love Connor, and I want to take care of you and worry about you and be proud of you for the rest of my life. Connor launched himself across the table to hug Victoria fiercely. I knew you'd say yes, Daddy was nervous, but I told him you love us too much to say no. Ryan laughed, finally speaking up. Connor was right. I was nervous. Why, Victoria asked, allowing Ryan to slide the ring onto her finger with reverent care. Because I was asking you to take on more than just marriage, Ryan said seriously. I was asking you to be Emma's mother, to be Connor's stepfather's wife, to legally bind yourself to a very complicated family situation. Ryan Mitchell. Victoria said firmly, there is nothing I want more than to be legally, officially, permanently part of this family. You three are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though we're sometimes loud and messy, and argue about who gets to pick the movie, Emma asked with concern. Especially because of that, Victoria confirmed, pulling Emma into a hug. Perfect families are boring. Loving families are noisy and chaotic, and absolutely wonderful. The restaurant staff had been watching their table with knowing smiles, and when Victoria held up her hand to show off her new ring, the entire dining room erupted in applause. Other diners approached their table to offer congratulations, and Victoria realized that their love story had become part of the heritage's folklore. We're going to have the wedding here, Emma announced to anyone who would listen. Right here, where they met and fell in love. We haven't actually discussed wedding plans yet, Victoria said, laughing. We have, Connor said matter-of-factly. Emma and I have been planning the whole thing. We have charts. Ryan and Victoria exchanged amused glances. Charts, detailed charts. Emma confirmed, with timelines and budgets and everything. We're very organized. Just like their parents, Ryan observed with affection. As they left the restaurant, Connor and Emma ran ahead toward the car, their excitement making them skip rather than walk normally. Thank you, Victoria said to Ryan as they followed more slowly, her hand in his. For what? For seeing that the children should be part of this moment. For understanding that we're not just two people getting married, we're four people becoming a family. Emma and Connor brought us together, Ryan pointed out. It seemed only right that they should be the ones to officially bring us together permanently. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face Ryan fully. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. You've given me everything I never knew I was missing. You've given me the same gift, Ryan said softly. A year ago, Emma and I were surviving. Now we're thriving. We're home. Home, Victoria repeated, testing the word. Yes, that's exactly what this is. They stood there on the Chicago sidewalk, engaged now officially planning a future together while their children chased each other through the golden light of an early spring evening. Victoria thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, successful, but isolated, competent, but cold, providing for Connor's future while missing his present. That woman could never have imagined this happiness, this sense of completion, this absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. When should we have the wedding? Victoria asked as they reached the car. Tomorrow, Emma called from the back seat. We're ready now. Maybe we should give the planning committee a little more time, Ryan suggested diplomatically. 3 months, Connor decided. That's enough time to organize everything properly, but not so long that we have to wait forever. Victoria looked at Ryan, seeing her own eagerness reflected in his eyes. 3 months sounds perfect. And it was perfect. Everything about their love story had been unconventional, unexpected, and absolutely right. Why should their engagement be any different? As Ryan drove them home, their home, Victoria realized with a surge of joy, she listened to Connor and Emma chatter excitedly about wedding plans, color schemes, and flower arrangements. In 3 months, she would officially become Victoria Mitchell. Connor would have a stepfather who loved him unconditionally and a stepsister who adored him completely. Emma would have a stepmother who was already fiercely protective of her happiness, and a stepbrother who thought she was the smartest, funniest, most creative person in the world. They would be a family in every sense of the word, legal, emotional, and eternal. And it all began with 2 lonely children who had the courage to see possibility where adults saw only complications, and 2 broken parents who learned that love doesn't always arrive the way you expect it. Sometimes it arrives with a giggling 8-year-old and a perfect spelling test, showing you that the most important acquisitions in life can't be negotiated or strategized or controlled. Sometimes love simply chooses you, and all you have to do is brave enough to choose it back. The wedding took place 3 months later on a perfect June morning at the Heritage Restaurant, which had been transformed into something magical by Emma's artistic vision and Connor's careful attention to detail. White roses and blue hydrangeas, Victoria's favorite flowers, adorned every surface, while string quartet music provided the elegant soundtrack Emma had insisted upon. Victoria stood in the restaurant's private dining room, looking at herself in the full-length mirror that Dr. Chen had insisted on bringing. Her wedding dress was simpler than the elaborate gown she'd worn for her first marriage, ivory silk with clean lines and subtle beading that caught the morning light beautifully. "You look perfect, Mom," Connor said seriously, adjusting his miniature groomsman's bow tie. As Ryan's best man, he took his duties very seriously, carrying the wedding rings in his pocket and checking his watch every few minutes to ensure they stayed on schedule. "Beautiful like a princess," Emma added, twirling in her flower girl dress. The purple silk had been her choice, and Victoria had to admit it complemented her red gold hair perfectly. "Are you ready for this?" Dr. Chen asked, checking Victoria's simple pearl necklace, something borrowed from Ryan's mother, who had flown in from Portland for the wedding. Victoria looked at her reflection one more time, seeing not the cold CEO who had first walked into this restaurant 14 months ago, but a woman transformed by love, softened by joy, and strengthened by the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," she said honestly. The ceremony space was intimate, just 40 guests, who represented the people who truly mattered to their new family. Victoria's small but dedicated staff from Hayes Medical sat beside Ryan's colleagues from the hospital. Mrs. Patterson Connor's beloved former nanny dabbed at her eyes with tissues. The Rodriguez family, whose apartment fire had been the catalyst for one of Victoria's first conversations with Ryan about his compassion for others, sat in the front row with their children. But it was the sight of Ryan at the altar that made Victoria's breath catch. He stood beside the officiant, looking devastatingly handsome in his charcoal grey suit, his eyes bright with emotion as he watched her approach. Beside him, Connor straightened his shoulders with pride, ready to officially gain a stepfather and a sister in one ceremony. Emma walked down the aisle first, scattering rose petals with the serious concentration of someone performing a vitally important task. She had insisted on practicing her walk dozens of times, determined to be perfect for Victoria's special day. Then Victoria appeared at the back of the restaurant, and Ryan's face lit up with such joy that several guests wiped away tears. She walked slowly down the aisle, not given away by any man, but choosing this moment for herself as an independent woman, making a conscious decision to join her life to Ryan's and to officially become Emma's mother. When she reached the altar, Ryan took her hands, his touch warm and steady, and absolutely right. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Victoria and Ryan and to celebrate the creation of a new family that already exists in every way that matters." Victoria barely heard the traditional words lost in Ryan's green eyes and the overwhelming sense of rightness that surrounded this moment. But she was brought back to attention when Connor stepped forward during the ring exchange. "These rings represent promises," Connor said clearly, having memorized his lines perfectly. "Daddy promises to love Mom forever and take care of our whole family, and Mom promises to love us all back and help us be the best family we can be." Emma took Victoria's bouquet so she could accept Ryan's ring, her small face glowing with happiness as she participated in making her family official. "I, Victoria, take you, Ryan, to be my husband, my partner and my best friend," Victoria said, her voice strong and clear as she slipped the ring onto his finger. "I promise to love Connor as my own son, to cherish Emma as my own daughter, and to build with you a family based on honesty, kindness, and unconditional love. I, Ryan, take you, Victoria, to be my wife, my partner, and my best friend," Ryan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to love Connor as my own son, to support your dreams as you support mine, and to choose our family every single day for the rest of my life." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Connor and Emma cheered so loudly that the entire gathering erupted in laughter and applause. Ryan kissed Victoria softly, their first kiss, as a married couple, while their children wrapped their arms around their parents' legs in an impromptu family hug. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced with amusement, "I present to you the Mitchell family." The reception took place in the Heritage's main dining room, where Victoria and Ryan had first sat together with two children who dreamed of belonging to something bigger than themselves. The same corner booth had been decorated with flowers and photographs, documenting their journey from strangers to family. During dinner, Connor stood up to give a toast with the serious demeanor of someone far older than 9. A year and a half ago, he began, his young voice carrying clearly through the room, "My mum was really sad, and I was really lonely. Then we met Emma and her daddy, and everything got better. Emma taught me how to have fun, and Ryan taught my mum how to smile again. Now we're all together forever, and I think that's the best thing that could ever happen." Emma jumped up beside him. "I want to toast too. Victoria is the best new mummy anyone could ask for, and Connor is the best brother ever, and Daddy found the perfect person to love us all." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face as she looked around the table at their small gathering of loved ones. Dr. Chen raised her glass with obvious emotion, while Ryan's mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "To the Mitchell family," Dr. Chen said warmly, "may your love story inspire everyone who hears it." As the afternoon progressed, Victoria found herself in quiet conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez, the mother from the apartment fire incident that seemed like a lifetime ago. Ms. Victoria. Mrs. Rodriguez said, "I want to thank you again for what you did for our family. The foundation money that helped us rebuild, we know that came from you." Victoria waved away the thanks modestly. "I just made a phone call. The Red Cross did all the real work. But you saw our need and acted on it," Mrs. Rodriguez insisted. "That's the kind of person you are. Ryan and the children are lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Victoria replied honestly. "They saved me in ways I didn't even know I needed saving." Later, as the reception wound down, Victoria and Ryan stood on the Heritage's outdoor patio watching Connor and Emma play with several other children who'd attended the ceremony. "Any regrets?" Ryan asked, wrapping his arms around Victoria from behind. "Only that we waited so long to make it official," Victoria replied, leaning back against his chest. "This feels like coming home." "What's next for the Mitchell family?" Ryan asked. Victoria thought about the future stretching ahead of them. Connor would start 4th grade in the fall, with Emma beginning 3rd grade at the same school. They'd already begun looking at houses in Ryan's neighborhood places, with big yards where children could run and play, with room for family dinners and homework sessions, and all the beautiful chaos of everyday family life. Hayes Medical Technologies continued to thrive under Victoria's leadership, but her approach to work-life balance had been permanently transformed. She attended every school event, helped with science projects, and made sure that Connor and Emma knew they would always be her first priority. Ryan had taken a position as Director of Emergency Medical Training at Northwestern, a role that allowed him to shape the next generation of first responders, while maintaining the flexible schedule that made him available for soccer games and art shows. "I think what's next," Victoria said thoughtfully, "is learning how to be a family of 4, learning how to make decisions together, how to navigate challenges together, how to celebrate successes together." "Sounds perfect," Ryan agreed, and maybe Victoria added, with a smile, adding a dog to the family. "Connor and Emma have been remarkably persistent in their campaign for a golden retriever." Ryan laughed. "A dog? Are you sure you're ready for that level of chaos?" "I'm ready for any level of chaos, as long as we're facing it together." As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 14 months ago, she'd been a woman driven by fear and control, building walls instead of bridges, prioritizing achievement over connection. Now she was part of something she'd never believed possible, a family built on choice rather than obligation, love rather than duty, joy rather than mere survival. Connor ran up to them, slightly out of breath from playing. "Mom, Dad, can we go home now?" "Emma wants to show me the photo album she made of our family." Victoria's heart caught on Connor's casual use of Dad for Ryan and our family, for the 4 of them together. "Of course we can go home," Victoria said, taking Connor's hand while Ryan scooped up an exhausted Emma. As they walked toward their car, Victoria caught sight of their reflection in the restaurant's windows, 4 people walking together, laughing and talking, looking like they'd been a family forever. And maybe Victoria thought they had been a family from the moment Connor first smiled at Emma's infectious laughter. Maybe family wasn't something you created through legal documents and ceremonies, but something you recognized when love chose you. The Heritage restaurant would always hold a special place in their story, the place where 4 lonely people found each other and discovered that the best acquisitions in life couldn't be planned or negotiated. Sometimes the most important things simply arrived disguised as ordinary Tuesday evenings, wearing the faces of laughing children who knew that love was meant to be shared, not hoarded. 2 years later, Victoria and Ryan sat in the Children's Hospital conference room they'd helped design, watching through the glass walls, as Connor and Emma led a group of young patients through an art therapy session. At 11 and 10, respectively, they'd become the hospital's youngest volunteer assistants, using Connor's scientific knowledge and Emma's artistic talent to bring joy to children facing medical challenges. Victoria's foundation had funded the new pediatric wing, while Ryan's expertise had shaped the family support programs that helped parents navigate their children's medical journeys. They'd learned that the best way to honor their own healing was to help other families find hope in their darkest moments. The golden retriever, Max, waited patiently in the hallway, his therapy dog certification making him the children's favorite volunteer. Connor had been right about the chaos a dog would bring, but he'd been even more right about the love that made every moment of chaos worthwhile. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, if it reminded you that love can find us in the most unexpected places, when we need it most, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that like button and let us know this story moved you. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about families finding each other against all odds. Share this with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the best things in life come when we're brave enough to open our hearts to possibility. Your comments mean the world to us, so tell us below, have you ever experienced an unexpected encounter that changed your life? We read every single comment, and your stories matter. Thanks for watching, and remember, love always finds a way. We'll see you in the next story.